Chapter 2086. BZZZ. The light beam kept rubbing against the ground under the vibrations of the air. It tore through the soil, separated the atmosphere, and swept across space, leaving a huge gully on the steep slope. At the same time, it also shot toward Freya's family members who were charging at the front lines. The light it emitted not only illuminated the space, but also the faces of Freya's family members. Everyone's frightened expression was clearly illuminated. At this moment, every member of Freya's family felt a sharp sense of crisis in their hearts. That sense of crisis, as if they had encountered death, clearly told every member of Freya's family how terrifying this light beam that was shooting at them at an astonishing speed was. Under such circumstances, the group of Freya's family members could not even move a muscle. All of them were frozen in place. Just like that, the fatal danger approached Freya's family members step by step. At this critical moment, four short figures darted over Freya's family members and landed heavily in front of everyone like boulders. They were the Gulliver brothers. The 4 level 1 adventurers of the dwarf stood at the forefront of Freya's family members with an unstoppable momentum. They faced the terrifying light beam with a thick tower shield in their hands. Bam! The 4 thick tower shields were heavily smashed to the ground by the 4 level 1 adventurers. They were tightly pressed together to form a shield wall, protecting all of Freya's family members within. The light beam, like a comet falling from the sky, instantly landed on the shield wall. Bam! A thunderous roar rang out. The light beam, carrying a terrifying force, viciously struck the thick shield wall. In an instant, the force turned into a strong platinum light that burned everyone's eyes. Ugh. Under the unbelievably terrifying impact, the Gulliver brothers let out a low groan of anguish. The veins on their hands holding the shields bulged as they held on to the tower shields in their hands with all their might. The 4 tower shields were not only heavy, but also astonishingly tough. The material used was the hardest steel to break, and the hardest metal required to forge equipment with the indestructible attribute had even been added inside. The defensive power and sturdiness of the materials were frighteningly high, and even the full force of the floor master and the deeper regions could not leave a single mark on the materials. Based on their level, the 4 tower shields were all level 1 weapons, and each tower shield was worth more than 100 million Varus. With this kind of tower shield, coupled with the buff from the 4 Golden Flame Warriors, that could even surpass LV6, there had never been an existence that could break through this defense. Today, such an existence had finally appeared. Although Noah had reduced the power of the divine sword to avoid flattening the entire mountain and causing Freya, Orpheus, and Lilith who were in the flower field on the mountain to be caught in it, it was still a strike from the divine sword. The light of salvation could even sever a star. Even if most of its power was suppressed, the amount of divine power provided by Noah was not much. But how could a few shields defend against it? Thus, in the next second, a strange sound clearly sounded from the surface of the 4 tower shields. Pa-gee, the clear cracking sound made the 4 Gulliver brothers widen their eyes. Piak, 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 piak. Following that, cracks began to appear on the surface of the 4 tower shields along with cracking sounds. In the blink of an eye, the cracks began to spread. The faces of the 4 Gulliver brothers were flushed red from exerting too much strength. Ignoring the tower shield that was gradually cracking under the impact of the platinum flashes, they roared in unison. Oh! Relying on their intimidating aura, the warriors of the hominid clan did not retreat. Instead, they charged forward with their tower shields. Boom! The light of salvation immediately seemed to have been detonated. It completely exploded, stirring up shocking flames and shockwaves. Oh! In the flames, the Gulliver brothers, who were holding the broken tower shields, rushed out together. As they roared, they set up different weapons. Sword, hammer, spear, and axe, 4 different weapons suddenly appeared in the hands of the 4 Gulliver brothers. The 4 hominid warriors swung the weapons like 4 meat grinders and rushed toward Noah. You have some ability, Noah said with surprise and admiration. He slightly raised the holy sword and divine saber in his hands. However, just as Noah was about to attack the Gulliver brothers, two figures suddenly appeared behind the broken tower's shield that the Gulliver brothers had set up. They were like two afterimages as they rushed towards Noah from the left and right of the Gulliver brothers. Die! The young catman, Alan, was proud of his swift legs. His figure almost turned into a phantom. In the blink of an eye, he rushed to the left side of Noah. The silver spear in his hand was like a viper, suddenly stabbing out violently. Me too. The dark elf, Higu, dashed to Noah's right side with a speed that was only slightly slower than Alan's. At some point in time, he was holding a pitch-black sword in his hand. He turned into a streak of black light and stabbed at Noah's throat. The LV-6 champion that Freya's family was proud of had finally made his move. Moreover, his first move was a swift and fierce killing move, showing no mercy at all. At the same time, the four Gulliver brothers rushed to the front of Noah. Their figures appeared behind the broken tower shields. The sword, hammer, spear, and axe in their hands were swinging violently. With a whistling wind, they violently attacked Noah in front of them. In an instant, except for the top and the back, several fatal attacks came from all directions and surrounded Noah tightly. Unfortunately, you can't find any advantage in a group battle against me. As soon as he finished speaking, the holy sword and divine saber in Noah's hands shone brightly. Ultimate sword technique. Form 3 Dance of the Moon. A slash that looked like moonlight was released. The highest grade elven device named Demon Slayer instantly turned into a cold sword light. Accompanied by Noah's spinning movements, it slashed towards the surroundings in a circular shape. Clang 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 clang. In a series of crisp clanging sounds, the weapons that formed half of the encirclement were easily deflected by the moonlight slash, causing bright sparks to fly. What? Alan, Higuni, and the Gulliver brothers were all shocked. In the end, they were met with a sneer. Is this the time to be surprised? After all, Noah's elven device wasn't just a demon slayer. While Alan, Higuni, and the Gulliver brothers were still in shock, the elven device called the Heavenly Sword of Salvation had also turned into a ray of moonlight. It was like a shockwave that suddenly spread out. The slash caused the pores on Alan, Higuni, and the Gulliver brothers to expand to their limits. Until Freya's family's trump card made its move. Whoosh! The strong man leaped high into the air like an iron tower. Holding the spare broadsword in his hand, he fell in Noah's direction like a meteorite, and at the same time, he released a huge chop from the top to the bottom. Clang! The great chopping strike, which was strengthened by the high-speed descent, accurately hit the white-gold divine saber that had transformed into a round of moonlight. Amidst the bell-like clashing sound and the splashing sparks, it successfully blocked the fatal strike that was aimed at Alan and the others. The LV-7 warrior otter entered the fray and landed in the middle of Alan, Higuni, and the Gulliver brothers who were deflected. He faced Noah directly. However, at the same time that Oda blocked Noah's attack, a shout suddenly rang out from behind. Get out of the way. Hearing this, Otter, Alan, Higuni, and the Gulliver brothers all retreated and instantly dispersed the encirclement, exposing Noah's figure once again. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Almost at the same time, a series of lightning bolts suddenly flashed, piercing through the air and landed on Noah's position. Bang 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 bang. The sound of an explosion rang out once again. Chapter 2087. Bam 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 bam. Lightning bolts flashed across the sky one after another, turning into a merciless bombardment that bombarded the top of the steep slope. Waves of impact and thick dust shook the ground. Under the merciless bombardment, the ground above the steep slope was smashed into smithereens. Debris flew in all directions, causing the surrounding atmosphere to become chaotic. This scene was almost identical to the one when Noah used the lightning of salvation to bombard the bottom of the steep slope. But this time, it was not Noah who released the lightning, but Hai Chin. Freya's first-level adventurer, a LV-6 white elf, Hai Chin. Unlike Higuni, who charged forward with his black blade, the white elf Hai Chin seemed to be more suited to the role of a rearguard. She stood at the forefront of Freya's party, her body rippling with magical energy as she continuously released lightning spells that were constructed from ultra-short chants, bombarding the top of the steep slope. Seeing that Noah's figure was enveloped by Hai Qin's magic, Otto growled without hesitation. Now. After he finished speaking, Oda took the lead to explode. He transformed into a bullet that left the barrel and shot towards the top of the steep slope. Not only Otto, but even Alan, Higuni, and the Gulliver brothers had all rushed out, heading straight for the top of the steep slope. But Otto and his party's goal was not to pursue Noah, but to go around him and head to the flower field to save the beauty Freya. In other words, from the start, Freya's party's battle plan had been set. They had shown great teamwork, one after another, and finally found the opportunity to rush up. The previous attacks were all for this moment. Understanding this point, a soft chuckle came from the top of the steep slope that was being bombarded by the violent lightning strikes and the thick sand and dust. Not bad. A familiar voice that did not move the slightest bit caused Otto and his party's expressions to change. Bam! With a loud explosion, a violent divine aura shook the center of the lightning bolts, instantly blowing away the surrounding dust and impact. Noah, who had revealed himself from within, looked up at Otto and the others whose expressions had changed drastically. He raised his platinum divine blade and swung it forcefully. That was really just a simple wave of strength. But this time, Noah was slightly more serious. After eternal strengthening, his physical strength alone had reached 5 digits. The strong wind caused by the powerful strike of a top-tier deity turned into a formless shockwave that spread out. Caught off guard, Otto and the rest were unable to react in time, and were directly struck by the powerful gust of wind that came crashing down on them. Bam! Like an explosion, the formless shockwave heavily shook Otto, Alan, Higuni, and the Gulliver brothers. Grr! Otto, Alan, Higuni, and the Gulliver brothers cried out in agony. Their bodies seemed to have crashed into an invisible wall and were sent flying like rubber balls towards Freya's family members who could not react in time. In an instant, the adventurers of Freya's family were knocked down by Otto and his party who were sent flying backwards. Cries of surprise rang through the night sky. Damn it! Hai Qin could not help but grit her teeth and hurriedly chanted an incantation. A few bolts of lightning suddenly formed and shot towards Noah's direction. Facing the bolts of lightning that were shooting towards him, Noah's expression did not change at all. He merely raised the silver holy sword in his other hand and waved it at the bolts of lightning. Poof! The silver sacred sword flashed at high speed and cut off the bolts of lightning. They turned into sparks and dissipated into the air. What? Hai Qin stood up in shock. He cut off the magic? What? Didn't I tell you? Noah looked at Hai Qin and laughed mockingly. No matter what kind of magic it is useless in front of my Aster. Also. Noah raised the platinum divine sword high into the sky again, and surging divine might continuously poured into it. Your lightning magic is not bad, but it is still not enough in front of my Athena. As soon as he finished speaking, the elven equipment named Heavenly Sword of Salvation started to glow with a brilliant light. As if in response to that resplendent light, dark clouds suddenly appeared in the boundless night sky above without any warning, instantly covering the entire night sky. The dark clouds entangled with each other like a black mass in the sky. Not only did they emit a terrifying pressure, but they also suddenly spun and formed a vortex. In the center of the vortex, bolts of lightning began to appear and converge. In an instant, the sky changed color. All the members of Freya's clan were stunned, and their minds were blank. Impossible. Hai Qin muttered as if she had lost her soul. Impossible. Impossible. Feeling the terrifying pressure from the black mass in the sky, Hai Qin was almost in despair. How can there be such a terrifying power in this world? Hai Qin's desperate roar was instantly drowned out by a thunderclap. Descend, under the command of this terrifyingly calm voice, the center of the vortex-like clouds converged into a thunderbolt so thick that it seemed to be able to pierce through the earth and struck down. Kaboom! A deafening roar resounded. Under the bombardment of the terrifyingly thick thunderbolt, the steep slope gradually collapsed and disintegrated. It was like stepping on building blocks, scattering little by little. At the edge of the steep slope, the dazzling thunderbolt suddenly appeared in the air, causing the entire mountain to tremble violently as if it had been swallowed whole. This horrifying scene was clearly witnessed by the people in the labyrinth city, Eulalia, who were a kilometer away. Of course, in the flower field at the top of the mountain, Freya, who was being guarded by Orpheus and Lilith, witnessed this scene from a close distance. Her breathtakingly beautiful face was illuminated by the dazzling light of the thunderbolt that fell from the sky. Witnessing it at such a close distance, just the deafening thunderclap and earth-shattering roar alone were enough to frighten many people. However, Beauty looked at this scene in silence, listening to the terrifying sound for a long time before she quietly closed her eyes. Just now, in Beauty's eyes, the radiance of the souls of all Freya's clan members had dimmed, becoming as fragile as a flame that was about to be extinguished. That was why Freya knew. Her children had all fallen. In other words, this rescue operation had completely ended in failure. Moreover, Freya's clan might even suffer an unimaginable blow, completely declining, and step down from their position as the most powerful clan in Eulalia. Originally, I just wanted to give Loki a little warning, and at the same time warn the swordswoman, but I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Freya did not know whether it was a self-deprecating laugh or a joyful one. That child is indeed different from the others so far. But then again, if he could act according to my wishes, he wouldn't have that kind of radiance that drives me, God, crazy. While Freya was lamenting, Orpheus and Lilith's hearts skipped a beat, as if they had received some kind of message, and looked at Freya. What's wrong? Freya smiled sweetly. Is there anything you need? Strangers of the same clan? Just now, Noah gave us an order through the contract. Orpheus looked straight at Freya. You can go now. I can go now? Freya raised an eyebrow and said slowly. Is this okay? That's what Noah said. Lilith tilted her head, expressionless but with a hint of joy. That's what he said, that's what he said. All right then. Freya shrugged her slender shoulders. I'll go take a look at my poor children. With that, Freya walked towards the place where the lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, only leaving behind a sentence before disappearing into the air. Whether it's destruction or not, let me, the King of Gods, witness your path to the end. Chapter 2088. Rumble. In the aftermath of the thunder, the dark clouds that covered the entire sky finally began to dissipate, and the originally clear night sky was once again exposed to the moonlight. The lightning that flashed on the side of the mountain also dimmed after an unknown amount of time. The platinum divine blade that was raised high up in the air retracted its radiance and was slowly lowered by its owner. In one hand, he held the demon slayer. In the other hand, he held the heavenly sword of salvation. The divine power on Noah's body gradually subsided, and he looked forward. Ugh, ah, a painful groan sounded in front of Noah. At this moment, the scene that appeared in front of Noah could only be described as miserable. A layer of the originally steep slope was severely shaved off. The ground was scorched black and there was steam like smoke everywhere. Gravel and rubble covered every corner. Wails and groans resounded in every part of the air. Humans, dwarves, elves, orcs, Amazons, dwarves, elves, orcs, Amazons, and other races were all lying on the ground. From time to time, one or two electric currents would run through their bodies, causing them to twitch. If there must be a way to describe the scene in front of him, then there was probably only one way to describe it. It was too horrible to look at. Under the direct attack of the thunder, Freya's family, one of the most powerful clans in the labyrinth city Arali, was completely defeated and could no longer stand up. The armor on their bodies had been shattered. The weapons in their hands could not be raised. As if they were completely ravaged by the enemy, all of Freya's family members were lying on the scorched ground, twitching and groaning at the same time. Such a scene was like hell. Noah, who was holding the demon slayer and the heavenly sword of salvation, looked at this scene without any ripples on his face. He slowly lifted his feet and walked forward. The scorched ground was like a fragile pastry under the footsteps of his shoes, and it scattered weakly. Wherever he passed, the adventurers who were confronting him just now could not stand up and could only groan. Noah walked past the adventurers on the ground and arrived in front of a burly orc. Looking down at Otto, who was also lying on the ground, Noah's pair of deep dark eyes flashed slightly, as if he was talking to himself. Even if you have reached LV7, you are still only at this level? The orc who was lying on the ground suddenly moved his hand. Noah, as if he did not notice anything, looked around at the fallen Alan, Higuni, Hai-Chin, and the Gulliver brothers, and spat out sarcastic words. The so-called strongest clan, in the end, is still only at this level? Alan, Higuni, Hai-Chin, and the Gulliver brothers' hands also trembled. Noah stood in the middle of Freya's family members who had fallen to the ground. His voice was calm, but the sarcasm and disdain in his voice was clear. There are so many people, and there is 1 LV7, 3 LV6, and 4 LV5 first-level adventurers, plus a bunch of LV1 to LV4 adventurers, and they can't even get past me. Is this the clan that the beauty Freya is so proud of? That love-struck fool wants me to join this clan? What a joke. Their trembling hands immediately clenched into fists, holding the charred soil in their hands, convulsing endlessly. Noah's voice continued to reverberate, and it reached the ears of the people who were lying on the ground. She has nothing but beauty, and can only use despicable methods like seduction to win over children, and in the end, she seduced a bunch of people like this? Isn't the favor of the beauty goddess great? Shouldn't the person who receives this favor feel honored? Don't you guys always say that your goddess is noble? In the end, you people who receive the so-called favor of the beauty goddess are only at this level, and you can't even save the people you love? Sure enough, favor can't feed you, and it can't make you stronger. Noah laughed and shook his head. His words were like the sharpest knife in the world, mercilessly stabbing into everyone's hearts. That love of a withered flower is bullshit. An unprecedented rage surged into everyone's hearts. Bastard. Alan's hands trembled, and he raised his head with difficulty. His eyes were already filled with anger and unwillingness. Damn it. Higuni, Hai-Chin, and the Gulliver brothers also desperately whipped their bodies, and raised their heads with great difficulty. Otto clenched his fists so tightly that his fingernails dug into his flesh, and fresh blood flowed out from his palms. At this moment, the hearts of Freya's family members were filled with the most intense anger and the most intense regret. Their goddess, whom they had always respected and worshipped, was humiliated by someone else, and they could not even grind his bones to dust. This anger and regret was not only directed at Noah, but also at themselves. It was no exaggeration to say that at this moment, as long as they were Freya's family members, they would feel worse than death. If not for the fact that they could not move, they would have charged at Noah a long time ago. Unfortunately, they were powerless. No matter how much they wanted to stand up, the intense pain that assaulted their minds caused Otto and the others to groan in pain. As a result, everyone on the ground could only raise their heads and stare at Noah with eyes full of bitter hatred. They wanted nothing more than to bite off a piece of flesh from Noah's body. Noah only curled his lips when he saw this scene. Just like a bunch of stray dogs, there's no value in killing them. Having said that, Noah turned his back and said, I thought that the love-struck fool was the over-god of one of the most powerful clans in Urali, and would cause me some trouble. Now it seems that I was just overthinking things. Didn't she want me so badly? Didn't she say that she loved me? Then let her continue to wander in front of me. Noah lifted his feet and walked forward. She's just an annoying fly anyway. With that, Noah walked up the steep slope and gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. Only Freya's family members were left, and they were all trembling. Noah Dole. Alan allowed the anger in his heart to explode, and let out the most hysterical roar of his life. The others also roared furiously, but tears flowed from their eyes. Only Oda lowered his head and gritted his teeth until blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Why am I so weak? when Freya came down from the flower field at the top of the mountain and walked along the collapsed slope to where Freya's family members were. Freya's family members had already forced themselves up and were leaning against the rocks to heal themselves. Some were using recovery magic on the injured. Some were drinking the recovery potions that they had prepared. Everyone was doing their own thing, but their eyes were full of decadence and lifelessness. Looking at this scene, Freya narrowed her eyes and walked forward. In the next second, Freya's family members noticed their over-god. Lady Freya, the dispirited adventurer's eyes lit up again. That look in his eyes was like that of a lost child who had found his parents. With Oda at the lead, Freya's first-level adventurer stepped forward and knelt in front of Freya. Lady Freya, you've been frightened. Indeed, I've encountered many surprising things. Freya crouched down and caressed Oda's face. She looked into his eyes and spoke softly. However, you all seem to have suffered even more than me. Everyone was silent. Lady Freya, Oda said in a low voice. Where's Noah Dole? He left, Freya said flatly. I was spared. It seems that in their eyes, I'm not even worth being sent back to the heavens. Her words reminded Oda and the others of Noah's scornful and sarcastic words. They all bit their lips. The helplessness of not being able to save their over-god with their own hands filled everyone's hearts. Oda was silent for a moment before he raised his head and looked directly at Freya. Do you still love that man? Chapter 2089. Are you still in love with that man? Otto's words caused the atmosphere in the room to become heavy. At this moment, all of Freya's family members were looking at their beloved goddess with an unprecedented seriousness in their eyes. Under everyone's gazes, Freya smiled sweetly as if she could read everyone's thoughts. I see hatred and rejection in your eyes. I'm sure that today's events have made you all hostile towards that child. If that was the case, then as a qualified over-god, Freya had to give up on Noah. Because if Freya still wanted to get Noah and let Noah join her clan, then all of Freya's clan who saw Noah as an enemy would have a grudge against him. In this way, even if Freya's clansmen were intimidated by their over-god's command and their love for Freya, and reluctantly joined the same clan as their enemy, it would still sow seeds of discord in the clan and cause the clan to collapse. If she was a qualified over-god, then she could not bury such a bomb in her clan and cause the clan to collapse. However, Freya said this to everyone. I love that child, and if I have to add weight to this love, then even if all of you added together, you still wouldn't be as heavy as him. The cruel words made the hearts of Freya's clansmen tremble. However, even though that was the case, Mation's excessively gentle voice still reverberated in the air. It's impossible to give up on that child. Pursuing the radiance of that child's soul is the thing that I desire the most to do. There is nothing that can surpass this desire, he said. Even if it's a clan. Even if it's all of you. Her resolute words made everyone in Freya's clan fall into silence. For these clan members who loved Freya deeply, Freya's words were even more painful than Noah's. But even so, none of Freya's clan members were disappointed in their beloved goddess. Because no matter how uncomfortable they felt, it still could not overshadow the love and loyalty of Freya's clan members to their over-god. But at the same time, everyone in Freya's clan remembered Noah's words. Anyway, it's just an annoying fly. Yes. An annoying fly. For Noah, who was so powerful that he could ignore all of Freya's clan members, if Freya, who had no means of threatening him, continued to pester him, what was she if not an annoying fly? At this thought, everyone clenched their fists, their emotions burning in their hearts. For Freya, even if Noah looked down on her, or even treated her as a fly, it was nothing, right? There was nothing else in the eyes of this beautiful goddess. She could only see Noah's sparkling soul. As long as he could pursue that glory, it didn't matter what Noah thought of him or what he did to the children of his clan. This was the distortion of Freya's emotions. In order to pursue the radiance of the soul, nothing else mattered. If Noah did not have the radiance of his soul, then Freya would not be so attached to the man she once loved, right? Therefore, Freya did not love Noah, but the radiance in Noah's soul. But even if Freya did not care about how Noah looked at her, it did not mean that the people here would tolerate Noah treating Freya like a fly. Thus, everyone had the same thought. Stop it. They must stop their goddess from pestering Noah. He couldn't allow his beloved goddess to be insulted by Noah again. Apart from that, everyone's heart was also burning with the desire to fight against Noah. Their beloved goddess must not be humiliated, and they must not be looked down upon by that man. With this thought in mind, Otto was the first to raise his head and look at Freya. I understand, Lady Freya. Otto said. If that is the case, please leave this matter to us. Leave it to you? Freya raised an eyebrow and looked at Otto. What do you mean? Lady Freya wants that man, right? Otto met Freya's gaze and spoke without hesitation. Then let us bring that man to you, Lady Freya. You don't have to worry about this anymore. That's right. That was Otto's idea. Since their beloved goddess wanted Noah, then they would bring that man to Freya. This way, not only would he be able to clear his name, but he would also be able to prevent Freya from being humiliated. If he succeeded, he would be able to vent his anger, and when Noah joined Freya's clan tribe, the hostility towards him would not be so serious, which would eventually lead to an explosive factor being buried in the clan tribe. Who would not want to kill 3 birds with 1 stone? I know that currently, we are not that man's match. We do not have the right to say such words. Otto closed his eyes. But in order to fulfill the great wish given to us by our goddess, we are willing to become stronger. We will become stronger than that man, so strong that we can bring him to you. Otto lowered his head to Freya as he uttered those words. We beg you, Lady Freya, to leave this matter to us. Just as Oda finished speaking, everyone from Freya's family, including Alan, Higuni, Haichin, and the Gulliver brothers all knelt on one knee, lowered their heads, and spoke in unison. We beg you, Lady Freya, to leave this matter to us. Everyone suddenly fell silent. Freya stared at the pleading children who knelt on one knee in front of her, and suddenly smiled. That smile was not the infatuation she showed to Noah, nor was it the beauty she showed to outsiders. It was a smile full of joy. The gods of the heavens descended to enjoy the entertainment of the lower realms. Freya's smile was exactly the same as the smiles of those gods who craved for entertainment. So that's how it is. In this world, there are not only me and that child. There are other people of all shapes and sizes. The intersection between you and that child because of me seems to have made some changes in you. This kind of change, for us eternal gods, is the most happy to see. If that is the case, I agree. Freya smiled happily. The man I once doted on, and the man I love now. What kind of changes will the sparks between you two create? What kind of radiance will your souls shine? Let me wait and see. Yes, sir. Oda and the others answered happily. Things are getting interesting. Let me wait and see for now. Freya raised her head and looked at the bright moon in the sky with a smile. It's fine. We don't lack time anyway. We don't lack time anyway. On the way back to the labyrinth city of Eulalia, Noah spoke to Athena who was beside him. No matter how infatuated that beautiful goddess is, she's still a goddess in the end. That goddess should be happy to observe the changes that have occurred in all of the spawns under my guidance. It doesn't matter whether the children of the spawn succeed or fail, that goddess shouldn't care, right? It would be great if she succeeds. If she fails, then we can just continue to pursue her. Noah spoke Beauty's mind in a single sentence. We don't lack time anyway, do we? That's the thought of a god who pursues entertainment. Athena said calmly. That goddess probably didn't expect that we've been following your plan all along, right? That's because it's easier said than done. It's not easy to fight a battle of wits and courage with a god. Noah shrugged. Anyway, as long as that infatuated goddess doesn't appear in front of me again, I'll have achieved my goal. As for Freya's clan, they won't come looking for me until they have enough power. I should be able to have some peace. In my opinion, what you're doing is too complicated. Athena shook her head and said. If you really want peace, why don't you just kill all of Freya's family members and send the beauty goddess back to the heavens? Isn't that enough? Perhaps. Noah pursed his lips and smiled. But that's not my style. Chapter 2090. Ugh, the next day, Loki sat on the sofa with his arms crossed and his eyes closed in the chat room of Loki's clan. No one knew what he was thinking about. Almost all of Loki's upper echelons were present in the chat room, but they were all doing their own things. Finn, Riveria, and Gareth were discussing matters. Bert was lying on the other sofa. On the other hand, Tiona and Tiona, the Amazon twins, relished in telling Aze and Leafia about what they saw in the flower field yesterday. It's true. Little brother has a second fairy as his companion. And it's a very powerful fairy. She defeated all of Freya's clan in one hit, and even Otto fell. Thus, Tiona and Tioni recounted what they saw and heard yesterday. Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he listened. Noah hadn't expected that Tiona and Tiorn would be hiding off to the side and observing. There were many of Freya's clan members at that time, and there were all kinds of auras. Although Tiona and Tiona were hiding, their auras were mixed with the auras of Freya's clan members, and Noah did not notice them. Therefore, Tiona and Tiona told Noah's story of bravery as if it was just a story. And they had told it several times already. But Aze and Leafia still seemed to be a little surprised. Noah actually had two fairies to assist him at the same time. This was something unheard of even in stories. Finn, Riveria, and Gareth were talking about this matter. Bert was lying there, but his expression was rather unpleasant. He was obviously thinking about this matter as well. As for Loki, after a long time, he could not help but sigh and say this. That's why I was wondering why that nymphomaniac child would suddenly take the wrong medicine. She actually still has the mood to enter the buried city at this juncture, and there are so many people. Otto and the other first-level adventurers even planned to go on an expedition. So it turns out that they were all provoked? Yesterday, Freya's clan members ignored the guild's warning and all rushed out of the city. Naturally, this matter could not be left unresolved. When Freya returned with the members of her clan from Eulalie, the guild was relieved, but at the same time, they began to question her severely. They even invited Freya to the guild headquarters to interrogate her. Freya did not make any superfluous excuses. She only told the guild that something had happened to her, and that the clan members were so impulsive because they wanted to save her. She hoped that the guild would punish them lightly. Since Freya did not leave the city, but returned with Freya's family, the guild believed Freya's story, but they still punished her. Needless to say, the fine, but there were other punishments. Freya's clan members were busy for the whole night before finally settling down. However, not only did Freya's clan members not go to rest, they all ran into the buried city. Even Otto and the other first-level adventurers went in. This behavior made many of the clan tribes puzzled. Until now, Loki finally understood what was going on. But that love-struck fool didn't reveal your identity? Loki glanced at Noah. I thought you'd be pushed into the limelight again this time. No matter what, as long as that love-struck fool doesn't bother me. Noah shrugged. Also, just because that beauty didn't reveal it doesn't mean that others won't. Don't forget, Drake, who knows about Loki's clan, is one of my people. There are quite a few of them in Freya's clan. Then what are you going to do? Loki asked. Are you going to lie low for a while? Lie low again? Noah laughed bitterly. After a moment of silence, he sighed. That's true. Freya's clan caused such a huge ruckus yesterday, even coming here to provoke us. If you leave the city immediately after leaving, and I wasn't around at that time, it might arouse suspicion. I might as well go into the dungeon without anyone noticing. When the time comes, you can openly say that I entered the dungeon a long time ago and had nothing to do with Freya's clan's ruckus. Is that so? Loki pondered for a moment and nodded. That's good too. How long do you plan to be gone? A month. Noah said indifferently. No matter what, you'll be back in a month, right? In other words, Noah planned to use this opportunity to leave. What he wanted to do was done. He even went to the dungeon and the unexplored area. Noah had no reason to stay any longer. At this moment, AIC turned her head and spoke almost reflexively. I'll go with you. However, just as AIC finished speaking, Loki, Bert, and Rafia reacted at the same time. No. Loki jumped up. You can't let AIC stay in the dungeon with this kid for a month. That's right. Rafia nodded. A single man and a single woman, that's ridiculous. We haven't finished our work from the expedition, don't even think about running away. Bert grimaced. It's already troublesome enough that this troublemaker wants to run away for a month. AIC, don't even think about leaving with him. AIC's head drooped as she became dejected. Seeing this, Noah couldn't help but laugh. He extended his hand and patted AIC's head. Only then did AIC perk up. A month? Tiona murmured. That's a little long. Yes. Tiona nodded. It's longer than the time you've spent in the clan. But, for an adventurer, a month of exploring the dungeon is nothing. Gareth stroked his beard. So, it's not like we can't accept it. And we don't have to worry about his safety, Riveria said. Even if we enter the 60th floor, Noah will be fine, right? I just hope we don't meet anyone from Freya's clan to avoid conflict. Finn turned his gaze to Noah. When do you plan to leave? Let's leave now, Noah said without hesitation. There's no time like the present. Everyone nodded one after another. AIC was the only one who kept staring at Noah with a hint of reluctance in her eyes. In response, Noah only patted AIC's head to calm her down. Then, Noah seemed to have thought of something as he looked out of the window. Let's go take a look before we leave, Lord Bale. Lord Chun-Ji. Lily, who was carrying a huge backpack, urged outside Hestia's clan camp. Please hurry up. I'm coming. Bale jogged out of the mansion, putting on his gauntlets as he ran. I'm sorry, I asked the great goddess to help me upgrade my ability. My daughter too. Chun-Ji also ran out of Hestia's clan camp and apologized to Lily. Although my power is weak, Lord Bale said that we plan to go to a new floor today. So, even if it's just a little bit, I hope that I can improve the magic ability and use my magic to help everyone. Well, that's a good idea. Lily handed a backpack to Chun-Ji. Then Lily will look forward to Lord Chun-Ji's performance. Yes. Chun-Ji took the backpack with a nervous look. At this time, Hestia came out of the mansion and looked at Bale, Lily, and Chun-Ji with a smile on her young face. She waved her small hand as if to greet them. Anyway, remember to go early and come back early. It's a little lonely when I'm alone at home. Yes. Bale, Lily, and Chun-Ji said in unison. Then, let's go. Okay. Hestia nodded proudly. Be careful. Bale, Lily, and Chun-Ji laughed and talked with each other as they walked towards the Tower of Babel. Hestia watched her children leave and then smiled. Go back and read your book. After saying that, Hestia turned around and walked into the mansion. Hestia did not notice. In the alley in front of the mansion, a person had been looking at them and had a panoramic view of the interaction between Hestia and her family. Seeing Hestia walk into the mansion, Noah suddenly smiled. Well, I'm going out too. See you in a month, Hestia. After saying that, Noah turned around and walked into the shadows. On this day, Noah left Eulalie and this world. Finally, between the worlds. Chapter 2091. This was an extremely vast and luxurious office. There was a chandelier that was bigger than a bed hanging from the ceiling. The floor was covered with a bright red carpet. The surrounding walls were hung with gorgeous hanging curtains. However, there was no wall on the side facing the door. Instead, there was a side of tempered glass that could directly see the scenery outside the building. Therefore, the lighting in this office was very good, allowing the warm sunlight to project into the interior, bringing a warm feeling. Of course, there was furniture in the office. There was a sofa and table cabinet sitting on the side. There was a bookshelf close to the wall. There were carts for brewing tea. Of course, there was also a luxurious desk. However, in this office, the most conspicuous thing was not the furniture, nor the huge glass wall and gorgeous chandelier decoration that replaced the wall, but a plaque hanging on the left wall. On the plaque, there were such words. Fairy Tale. A guild name that was more resounding than anything else in this world. At this moment, the guild's acting president was sitting at the luxurious desk, wearing glasses on her face, flipping through a document. She was a young girl in her prime. She should be around 20 years old. She had a head of beautiful black waist-length hair. She was wearing a standard office lady's formal dress that only a strong woman would wear. Her thighs that were exposed outside the skirt were covered with black stockings, and her feet were wearing high heels. She was very charming. It was believed that no matter who it was, if any man saw such a young girl who was obviously in a high position and was very charming, they would more or less have some feelings of being moved. However, if one looked carefully, they would find that this acting president was not just a strong woman with appearance and working ability, but no strength to truss a chicken. That was because a sheathed long saber was leaning against the wall beside him. The young girl had been working seriously like this, flipping through the documents on the desk one after another, and her spirit was quite concentrated. Under such circumstances, the entire office was filled with an atmosphere of silence, without the slightest sound. Gotcha. After an unknown amount of time, the sound of the door opening could be heard. Then, another young girl walked in from outside the door. The newcomer was not as charming as the former. It was not that this young girl was not good-looking, but the young girl's age had not reached the mature charm of the former. Her figure was petite and tender. Judging from her appearance, she should be a young girl less than 14 years old. However, this young girl who was not even 14 years old had a calmness and intelligence that a normal child should not have. She gave people a feeling that she could not be underestimated. The young lady, who was carrying a pile of documents, had just entered the office when she saw the acting president sitting there, concentrating on flipping through the documents. She immediately let out a soft sigh. "Miss Mugging, have you not rested yet?" Hearing someone call her, the acting leader of a guild called Fairy Tale, Celestial Child finally raised her head from the documents in her hands, revealing an incomparably exquisite face. Looking at the petite girl who walked into the office, she faintly smiled. "You're here, Xiaoshi." "Yes, I'm here, but I'm here according to the normal working hours," Xiaoshi said coldly. "As for Miss Mugging, if I'm not wrong, you've been in the office since yesterday and didn't go back to rest at all, right?" "It can't be helped." Mugging took off her glasses, rubbed her eyebrows, and said, "There have been too many things targeting us recently. If we don't grasp more information about the countries around the world now, when we confront them, we will definitely be suppressed." What Mugging had been reading since yesterday was not an ordinary document, but the latest information from all over the world that had recently been collected. Xiaoshi seemed to understand Mugging's thoughts and frowned slightly. "The countries around the world still haven't given up on their complaints against us?" "It's not that easy." Mugging smiled coldly. "After all, we have all the initiators in the world, and even all the cursed children in the world. Children infected with the protozoan virus, cursed from birth, and possessed power beyond that of humans. That was the cursed child. The so-called initiators referred to the cursed child who formed a partnership with a human as a facilitator, became a police officer, and was responsible for the work related to the protozoan virus. Someone said that they were the last hope of the world. However, the treatment that these children suffered in this world was worse than that of dogs. After all, the source of power that gave these children power was the same blood as the protozoan virus that threatened the survival of humans. Therefore, people regarded these children as monsters. Therefore, people unilaterally hated these children. This kind of discrimination and hatred had not been erased until now. However, the fate of the cursed children was no longer as miserable as before. If there was a reason, there was only one reason. That was fairy tale. A shelter called Monsters by the World, providing a place for the cursed children, had now become a civil organization that could not be ignored by the major countries in the world. After 3 years of development, our guild has taken in almost all the cursed children in the world, including the children who formed a police team 3 years ago and became the initiators. Mugging looked up lightly, her eyes flashing with sarcasm. However, it is precisely because of this that the countries in the world have lost most of their power to fight against the protozoan virus. Now, they have completely fallen into a state of panic, and it is natural that they would accuse us. Therefore, since a year ago, countries in the world have begun to claim that we have illegally entered their country and taken away their citizens from their borders. Some countries have also claimed that we have stolen weapons against the protozoan virus from their countries. Xia Shi's tone also became a little cold. To them, the cursed child is just a weapon against the protozoan virus. Moreover, it is a weapon that they can ruin however they want. Mugeng's tone was filled with extreme disgust. How ugly. However, not all countries are like this, Xia Shi said. Although some countries led by the United States have been accusing us, the big countries in the East have chosen to be neutral in a wait-and-see manner. The Tokyo region is directly on the same front as us and has been supporting our approach. However, no matter which country it is, our evaluation is not very good. Mugging sighed. In the eyes of many people, we are just an insidious force that wants to rely on monopolizing the cursed child to achieve the purpose of controlling countries in the world. After 3 years of development, today's fairy tale had almost all the cursed children in the world. In other words, it was the only force that could compete with the protozoan virus and carry out police missions. Adhering to the obligations of a non-governmental organization, Fairy Tale now faced the world and accepted commissions from all over the world. To put it bluntly, the reason why countries in the world could still exist today was because of Fairy Tale. If we don't accept a commission from a country, then the country will almost certainly perish. As a result, some countries that don't want to see their survival in the hands of others naturally make a fuss. Mugging picked up a document on the table and said, "Most of the recent intelligence reports have mentioned this. The rulers of various countries all hope to regain control of the cursed child's power and have already started to take action. I'm afraid that before long, all the countries in the world will join forces to attack us, right?" Attack? Xia Shi was a little incredulous. In other words, the countries in the world will unite and wage war against us? It is possible, but I will not let them succeed. Mugging stood up from his seat and walked to the glass wall. He looked at the bustling street outside and spoke resolutely. "The guild that Noah entrusted to me, no matter what, I will protect it." Xia Shi nodded his head heavily. Chapter 2092. The current fairy tale was no longer the same as it used to be. 3 years ago, after Mugging took over the position of guild leader, he had been laying the foundation for the development of Fairy Tale with Xia Shi's help. First, Mugging quietly cast a large amount of holmium into a huge stone tablet, creating a city that belonged exclusively to Fairy Tale. He then moved the entire Fairy Tale over to it. Immediately after, Mugging announced to the world that Fairy Tale had developed a medicine that could completely reverse the activation of the Archilon virus, preventing the cursed children from being infected by the Archilon virus, and finally turning into Archilon. This news shocked all the countries in the world. In this way, the cursed children who did not want to become primitive animals would naturally try their best to enter the Fairy Tale and join the Fairy Tale. Moreover, Fairy Tale would send out a large number of tour groups every year to bring the cursed children from all over the world to Fairy Tale. The cursed children were regarded as monsters in all the countries in the world. In the beginning, no one cared about the loss of the cursed children, allowing Fairy Tale to successfully take in many cursed children. Gradually, when the cursed children from all over the world had gathered in Fairy Tale, each country began to realize that they had lost a large portion of their cursed children, which was equivalent to losing a large amount of power to fight against the Archilon. When they were surprised again, there were not many cursed children left in their countries. It was only at this time that the major countries finally began to panic and gather the cursed children in their countries, greatly reducing the number of cursed children that flowed into fairy tale. However, even so, there would still be many cursed children who would go to fairy tale with the help of tour groups and under various circumstances. Over time, located not far from the Tokyo area, the city that belonged to fairy tale finally developed into a bustling city. The people who lived here were either humans who did not reject the cursed children, or they were cursed children. If it continued to develop like this, sooner or later, the cursed children would completely integrate into the human race and no longer be regarded as monsters, right? Therefore, as the beginning of a new era, and the city where the headquarters of fairy tale was located, many people called it Fairyland. Note, Avalon, where Arthur the Night King of Great Britain rested, was also called Fairyland. It also had the meaning of fairyland. However, as Mugging said, many people did not like the existence of fairyland. That was not only because many people rejected the cursed child, but also because the cursed child here would choose to join the fairy tale and strengthen the power of the fairy tale. With almost all the cursed children in the world, the current fairy tale was fully capable of conquering the world, and could even use the fact that the major countries were threatened by the primitive animals as a condition to firmly control the major countries by providing help. To put it bluntly, the current fairy tale had the ability to become the world's overlord. Of course, this would cause the rulers of the world to feel a sense of crisis. Those countries who did not want to see their countries threatened by others, and wanted to firmly hold power in their own hands, naturally saw fairyland as a thorn in their side. If it wasn't for the fact that they were afraid of the power of the fairy tale, the surrounding countries would have already attacked them. Knowing that they were unable to fight against the fairy tale with their own strength, the various countries only had one choice under such circumstances. That was to join forces. With the power of all the countries in the world, wage war against fairyland, and finally bring the cursed children back under control. That was the wishful thinking of the rulers of many countries. Coupled with the fact that various countries were creating public opinion and spreading rumors that fairy tale intended to monopolize the cursed children to gain control of the major countries, fairyland was now at the cusp of the world's storm. Mugging, who had sharply sensed the recent movements of various countries in the world that had led the situation to the direction of war, worked through the night to gather information from various countries and prepare. Therefore, as the residents of Fairyland began their daily lives, the border where the giant stone monument stood was heavily guarded to a frightening degree. At least, Noah had just arrived at the city gates when he immediately sensed the tense atmosphere in the air. Does this count as me coming back at the right time? As he said that, Noah stood outside the city gates of Fairyland and looked up at the city before him. At first glance, rather than calling it a city, it would be better to call it a fortress. That was because in this city, apart from the towering black giant stone monuments at the border, each of the giant stone monuments were connected together with steel walls, firmly protecting Fairyland within. If you look at it this way, this place is a little similar to the maze city of Eulalia. Even as he said that, Noah found patrolling personnel on the city walls and the giant stone monuments. Of course, those people were not soldiers, but police officers belonging to Fairy Tale. Among them, there were promoters of humanity, and initiators of combat forces. Pairs of police officers were all wearing standard uniforms, and like the National Defense Forces, they were heavily guarded. Although I don't know what happened, but if I just go in like this, they won't let me in so easily, right? Noah fell into deep thought. Finally, in order to avoid trouble, he made a decision. Let's just sneak in. With that, Noah leaped, and his figure rushed straight into the clouds, and then turned into a blur, and swept into Fairyland. Cars came and went. People flowed continuously. Skyscrapers were everywhere. Roads extended in all directions. The bustling scene, no matter how one looked at it, looked like a bustling city. Noah walked on the crowded street, but his eyes were always looking around. Come on, come chase me, don't run. On the sidewalk, a group of children were smiling innocently, happily running past Noah. Noah could clearly see that the pupils of the children were as red as blood. Without a doubt, those children were the cursed children. However, These children were beaming with smiles of their age, laughing from the bottom of their hearts as they chased after each other. On the side, the pedestrians seemed to have gotten used to this scene, and continued with their own business. At the position of the red street lamps, some kind-looking old people were even laughing and chatting with a group of cursed children. The cursed children, who were hated by most people, blended into the city as if it was a matter of course. Even if they displayed superhuman abilities from time to time, it did not cause any panic. Looking at this scene, Noah could not help but recall what happened when he first came to this world. At that time, Noah also encountered a cursed child running on the street. However, at that time, the cursed child was like a rat crossing the street, being chased by a group of adults with faces full of hatred and ugliness. Noah would never forget the way the child looked at him at that time. She was afraid that Noah would harm her. Her eyes were filled with fear. It was because of that incident that Noah finally made the decision to protect the cursed child. Recalling the incident at that time, and looking at the scene before him, Noah could not help but smile. Chapter 2093. At this moment, there was only one thought in Noah's mind. That was, his previous efforts had not been in vain. Although Noah had only created Fairy Tale and laid the foundation of Fairy Tale and left the development to Mugging and the others, without Noah, the utopia in front of him would not have appeared. Looks like my decision to return to this world was right. Noah, who muttered, could not help but recall what had happened after he left the Maze City Alley and returned to Between Worlds. What? In the pure white world, Noah looked at Gaia and Alea in shock. There is only one world left to go to? Yes. There was only one world left to go to. Just now, after Noah returned to Between Worlds, Gaia and Alea announced this news to Noah. Why? Noah asked out of reflex. Why is there only one world left to go to? It was natural for Noah to be so anxious. This was because Noah still had a few worlds that he had not returned to. If possible, Noah also wanted to return to those worlds to see the friends he had made before the final battle. However, Gaia and Alea suddenly said that there was only one world left for him to go to. How could Noah not be anxious? Gaia and Alea could do nothing about this. It's not that we don't want you to continue to relax, little Noah, Gaia sighed. It's just that there isn't enough time. Not enough time? Noah froze. Looking at the stunned Noah, Alea pointed in a direction. Look there. Hearing this, Noah looked in the direction Alea was pointing and cast his gaze over. In the next moment, Noah saw it. There was a stone plate suspended in midair. Its outline was connected to 10 patterns, with a sun carved in the center. The sacred text surrounding the stone plate was no longer like before, absorbing the white mist called imaginative power. Its color was also completely different from before. Whether it was the stone plate that represented authority, the sun that represented sovereignty, or the sacred words that represented grace, they had all transformed into the purest white color. Seeing this, Noah's heart skipped a beat, and he spoke with uncertainty. Could it be? Under Noah's probing question, Gaia and Alea both nodded. Thus, Noah understood. His authority, sovereignty, and favor had all been sublimated. As long as they returned to his body, all the possibilities in his body would be opened up, and he would have invincible power that could rival the world. Next, we just have to wait for the imaginative power to completely fuse with the energy and it will be complete. Alea looked at Noah. Because Between Worlds doesn't have the concept of time, we can't be sure how long this fusion will take. But, according to our estimation, when you return from the next world, it will be almost done. Gaia also looked at Noah and raised a finger. The barrier against shadow is almost at its limit, so little Noah, you can only go to the next world, and then you will have to complete your mission. Noah was silent, and his emotions were complicated. Has this moment finally arrived? Wang. Not knowing if it was because they sensed Noah's complicated emotions, the surrounding feathers that represented the world itself began to tremble. Like little birds, they gathered around Noah and fluttered as if they were comforting Noah. Seeing this, Noah's emotions gradually calmed down. Taking a deep breath, Noah met Gaia's and Alea's gaze and nodded heavily. I understand. Gaia smiled at Noah. Although Alea was still as expressionless as before, she also gave Noah an encouraging look. The two restrained themselves, as if to not disturb Noah, silently retreated. Under such circumstances, Noah turned his gaze to the surrounding feathers. Next, Noah could only go to the next world. When he came back, Noah had to put an end to everything. If he succeeded in surviving, then Noah would naturally have the opportunity to return to the worlds he had been to before, and even continue to travel in the worlds he had never been to before. But if he failed, then the next world would be the last place where Noah could leave his memories. Then, which world should Noah choose? The worlds that Noah had been to before, he had already returned to most of them. The only ones left were the Black Bullet, Absolute Dual Blades, Night of the Magicians, and Undead King. Then, of these 4 worlds, which one did Noah want to go to the most? Thinking of this, Noah almost immediately made a decision. In the end, the world that Noah chose was this world. Black Bullet. After all, that world is the one that I am most worried about. In this world, there was the child that Noah had risked his life to protect. In this world, there was the evil that Noah had risked everything to fight against. And in this world, there was the person that Noah had made a lifelong promise to. Gaia had said that Noah should not have any regrets. If Noah had any unfinished business in the remaining worlds, then he had to quickly finish it. This way, Noah would naturally think of the Black Bullet world. After all, in the Absolute Dual Blades, Night of the Magicians, and Undead King worlds, Noah had nothing else to do other than to see those familiar faces. In the remaining worlds, there was only the Black Bullet world. In that world, Noah still had things to do. Thinking back to that pure white and holy figure, Noah muttered. 3 years? In the beginning, when Noah and the Holy Son of Heaven made an agreement, the time limit was 3 years. When choosing to enter a world, if there was a world fragment in that world, then the world would automatically send Noah to the timeline of the world fragment. But if there was no world fragment, then Noah could freely choose the time to enter. Of course, for a world that Noah had been to once, when he entered again, a month would have passed no matter what. As long as it was not within a month after Noah left this world, then Noah could freely choose the time to enter. If that's the case. Noah pointed at a feather. Then this time I will choose to enter the timeline 3 years later. Thinking back to the decision at that time, Noah really felt that he did the right thing. Otherwise, Noah would not have been able to see the city in front of him that had realized his original idea. Fairyland, huh? Noah, who had a general understanding of the city's situation from the conversations of the passers-by, could not help but smile again. Quite a good name. With that, Noah continued to walk forward. At this time, Noah noticed some commotion on the street. A group of pedestrians gathered in front of a building, discussing animatedly while looking at a huge screen on the front of the building. On the screen, there was a live broadcast. It was a live broadcast of a press conference. Noah raised his head, looked at the screen, and then raised an eyebrow. Because, the person being interviewed in front of the screen was Noah's acquaintance. Is that Mugging? On the screen, the person being interviewed was Mugging. Compared to 3 years ago, Mugging had lost all of her childishness. She was no longer wearing the high school uniform of a female high school student like before. Instead, she was wearing the formal office wear of a strong woman. However, her figure was better than before. I wonder what kind of expression this girl will have when she sees me. Noah, who could not help but chuckle, immediately lifted his feet and walked forward. But just as Noah was about to find someone to inquire about the location of the Fairy Tale Guild headquarters, in the live broadcast, a reporter suddenly asked such a question. President Tian Tong, it is said that Fairy Tale plans to control the world by monopolizing the cursed children, or even rule the world. May I ask if this is true? Noah's footsteps suddenly stopped. Chapter 2094. Rule the world? Noah frowned slightly, stopped in his tracks, turned his head, and returned his gaze to the screen. Like Noah, the pedestrians on the road all stopped in their tracks and looked at the screen, causing a large group of people to gather in front of the building. The noise grew louder and louder. However, on the live broadcast of the press conference, Mugen's expression remained unchanged as he responded to the reporters who asked sharp questions. Everyone has said that it's just a rumor. Don't make such baseless remarks. But the fairy tale, led by President Tiantong, now has the strength to do so, right? Another reporter raised his hand. Today's fairy tale has taken in almost all the cursed children in the world and accepts commissions from all over the world. Whether it's in terms of strength or reality, if the fairy tale wants to rule the world today, isn't it the most likely thing to do? Yes, yes. A female reporter also asked. As long as President Tiantong says the word, the situation of this world will completely change. It's not impossible to rule the world, right? Moreover, it's said that the fairy tale still has the powerful secret weapon that killed the Scorpio of the Zodiac Stage V 3 years ago and the army of Protozoa during the Third Battle of Tokyo, isn't it? The third reporter began to ask. Although it's a bit inappropriate to say this, doesn't President Tiantong want to rule the world? The extremely sharp questions caused the pedestrians in front of the screen in the building to begin to clamor. However, Mugen's expression remained unchanged as he answered the reporters' questions with an upright attitude. If you must ask if I want to rule the world, then I will tell everyone that I don't want to at all. His resolute and decisive words stunned the reporters who had asked sharp questions. First of all, I must correct everyone's statement that one word from me can change the situation of the world. Mugen looked around at all the reporters. Everyone may have forgotten that I'm only the acting president of Fairy Tale. The real president is only on a business trip because of an important mission. If he really gives orders, then it may change the situation of the world. I'm only his agent, and I don't have the final say in Fairyland. Therefore, my right to speak is not as important as everyone thinks. Secondly, even if I do have the right to speak to a certain extent, then I won't let Fairy Tale go to the battlefield to rule the world. Mugen said righteously. Fairy Tale's purpose from the beginning to the end, and that is to protect the cursed children who are discriminated against by the world. It was in the past, is now, and will be in the future. What we want to create is a world where the cursed children can live freely and let those children grow up happily. Under this premise, sending those children to the battlefield to face the danger of their lives is something we will never do. Mugen changed the topic. Of course, we are not the kind of people who will not fight back after being beaten. We will not initiate a war, but if someone intends to harm Fairyland, then Fairy Tale will not be afraid of any battle. Mugen's words made the passers-by in front of the screen cry out loudly. Great! Well said. As expected of President Tiantong, well said. Compared to the residents of Fairyland, the reporters at the press conference were stunned, looking at each other in dismay. Only a portion of the foreign reporters continued to question Mugen. President Tiantong's speech seems to be a little contradictory, isn't it? A foreign reporter said with a sarcastic tone. Undoubtedly, President Tiantong said that he wants all the cursed children to grow up happily, but let the cursed children be the initiators and form a police force with the facilitators to fight the protozoa. Compared to going to the battlefield, that doesn't seem to be any different, does it? Regarding this, I personally feel that it is very problematic. This kind of heavy responsibility should not be handed over to those young children. Mugen glanced at the reporter and smiled back. It's just that we adults are too useless. We have no way to deal with the protozoa that harm humans, so we can only leave it to the children. That's fine, but when the children are fighting the protozoa with all their might, we adults are still wasting our time on boring things like ruling the world, scheming against each other all day long. In comparison, don't you think that we are really much worse than those children? With that, all the reporters showed an awkward and speechless expression. Meanwhile, Mugen was still speaking. If it's possible, I personally hope that one day, we adults can be so powerful that we don't need to rely on the children's strength to protect ourselves. Instead, we can protect those children. That's what adults should do, Mugging said faintly. It's just that the current hope is too slim. Those cursed children are indeed born with power that surpasses humans. In the face of the powerful protozoa, we can only rely on them. Therefore, even if we don't have the ability, we have to know our own limitations, Mugging said earnestly. I hope everyone can remember that we are now being protected by those children. It's because of those children that we can continue to survive. It's because of those children that the protozoa can be defeated. It's because of those children that humans will not go extinct. Those children are our hope, not to be used as a scale to measure who the world belongs to. In front of all the reporters, Mugging raised one of his hands. On that hand, there was the guild emblem, Fairy Tale. I swear to the emblem on my hand that I will never use the cursed children as weapons and throw them into meaningless wars. Mugging made the most solemn declaration so far. However, if someone intends to use those children to achieve selfish goals, or use those children as sacrifices for power, then I will represent the entire fairy tale to raise the weapon in my hand and fight to protect the children, to protect fairyland. We, Fairy Tale, will never fight for the sake of invading. We will only fight to protect our family and companions. Mugging said, emphasizing each word. Even if the enemy is the whole world. With that, Mugging bowed his head to the camera and thanked it. The press conference ended there. Clap, 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 clap. On the street, the pedestrians all clapped and praised Mugging loudly. Even a group of cursed children who had gathered together clenched their fists and made the declaration. If someone really intends to destroy fairyland, then when the time comes, I'll go too. That's right. Although it's a little scary on the battlefield, to protect everyone, I'll go too. Everyone, study hard together, train hard, and become stronger as soon as possible, then join Fairy Tale together. Yeah. A group of children in their early teens, under the watchful eyes of the public, made such a grand wish. Seeing this scene, the pedestrians looked at these children with watchful eyes, silently sending their blessings and encouragement. After all, these children were also the hope of fairyland. At this time, Noah, who was hiding in the crowd, had turned around and continued to walk forward. However, if one looked closely, one would notice that Noah's lips could not help but curve into a happy arc. You've created a decent city, Mugging. With that, Noah raised his head and looked at the sky as if he was looking at some enemy, his smile becoming a little cold. It seems that some clowns have really jumped around in my absence. It's time to remind them. Chapter 2095. Fairy Tale. The headquarters of the guild that created Fairyland and accommodated almost all the cursed children in the world was at the center of Fairyland. However, it was different from the fairy tale in the other world where Noah grew up. At least, as the headquarters of the guild, the fairy tale in this world was not a castle-like building, but a skyscraper of astonishing height. Seeing this skyscraper, Noah's first thought was absurd. The structure of the city is the same as Eulalia, but I didn't expect there to be such a skyscraper in the center of the city. I almost thought I saw the Tower of Babel. In the center of the maze city Eulalia, the Tower of Babel was mainly used as the cover of the underground city, followed by the residence of the gods and the shop of the spawns. At the heart of Fairyland, the skyscraper named Fairy Tale was not as tall as the Tower of Babel, but it was almost as tall as the Great Stone Monument, and definitely not shorter than the Great Stone Monument. The astonishing height really gave Noah a sense of déjà vu of the Tower of Babel. Although the two looked completely different. I really wonder if 3 years is enough to make Fairyland so prosperous, let alone build such a skyscraper. With such a thought, Noah walked toward the skyscraper's door. The door seemed to be an automatic door, and it opened automatically when Noah came forward. Then, a vast office hall came into Noah's sight. In this office hall, there were lively people everywhere. Some were clients who came to handle commissions. Some were guild police officers who came to accept commissions. Noah could see clearly. On the huge bulletin boards on both sides of the office hall, commissions were posted all over, and there were at least tens of thousands of them. A large number of police officers were walking back and forth around these bulletin boards. Some were worrying about what commission to accept. Some were discussing the commission. Some directly tore the commission and went to a counter to handle it. Walking in this office hall, Noah looked back and forth curiously. "Welcome." At this time, a young lady standing behind the counter immediately bowed to Noah, who was passing by, with a very friendly smile on her face. "This is Fairy Tale. May I ask if you're here to issue a commission?" Although Fairy Tale was now open to the entire world, as the largest hub of fairyland, it was only natural that it would be commissioned by Ren Metropolis. Our commissions are mainly divided into 5 grades, A, B, C, D, and E. If you're here to issue a commission, please fill in the commission content on the commission form here. Then, we'll classify your commission according to the difficulty of the commission content. The young lady at the counter introduced it to Noah very fluently. Of course. The higher the difficulty, the higher the level of the commission, and the higher the remuneration. We will give you a rough range of remuneration based on the level of the commission you issue. Of course, this range is only for reference. If you have any inquiries, you can ask me. Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but laugh at the counter lady's skillful introduction, while thinking silently in his heart. So, the commission system that I set up back then is still in use now? Grading commissions. That was the system that Noah set up back then. After all, if the difficulty of the commission was too high, once it was accepted by some incompetent police officers, it would just be harming others. Therefore, the police officers in Fairy Tale also set up a hierarchy that corresponded to the level of the commission. Of course, the police officer hierarchy in the guild was set according to the police officers' IP ranking. Police officers in the top 1,000 of IP ranking were level A, and could accept level A commissions. Police officers in the top 3,000 of IP ranking were level B, and could accept level B commissions. Police officers in the top 5,000 of IP ranking were level C, and could accept level C commissions. Police officers in the top 10,000 of IP ranking were level D, and could accept level D commissions. Police officers in the top 10,000 of IP ranking were level E, and could accept level E commissions. According to this system, high-level police officers could accept low-level commissions, but low-level police officers could not accept high-level commissions. This was the hierarchy system that Noah set up. Of course, Noah didn't know that although this hierarchy system was still in use, in fact, there were also level S commissions within the guild. Those requests were like the fairy tale of the other world. They were not posted in the lobby on the first floor, but on the floors above. In the fairy tale of the other world, only S-ranked sorcerers could accept S-ranked missions. In this world's fairy tale, only S-rank police officers could take on S-rank missions. However, to be able to become level S police officers, all of them were police officers in the top 300 of IP ranking. After all, level S commissions were almost all difficult commissions that needed to be carried out abroad. Generally, they were issued by high-ranking officials from all over the world. In other words, level S commissions were dangerous missions that the major countries in the world couldn't complete themselves, and could only seek help from Fairy Tale. Such dangerous missions, and missions issued by other countries, were basically the most confidential missions. Therefore, these missions naturally couldn't be handled at the counter. All of them were specially evaluated, argued, and discussed by the higher-ups of Fairy Tale. Then, they were made into commissions and posted in a special area. Only police officers in the top 300 of IP ranking could enter this area and accept level S commissions. Noah hadn't accepted commissions from all over the world yet, so of course, he didn't have the concept of level S. Looking at the counter lady skillfully pushing the blank commission sheet in front of him, Noah's eyes turned slightly, then suddenly smiled, picked up the pen, and smoothly filled in the commission sheet. The content of the commission sheet was like this. Mission name: search for a person. Mission content: bring the designated person in front of the client, then the mission can be completed. Designated person: Tengu Mugging. Reward: 1 yuan. Client: Noah Doria. When Noah handed such a commission slip to the counter girl, the friendly smile on the counter girl's face completely froze after reading the contents. In the bustling office hall, in the noisy atmosphere, only the space around Noah and the counter lady seemed to be isolated. It became dead silent. Finally, the smile on the counter lady's face collapsed, and she was obviously flustered. "See, sir." Under the counter lady's flustered and sharp cry, many people around looked over. But Noah suddenly grabbed the counter lady's hand, and with a smile on his face, he spoke softly. "Don't be so flustered, I'm just here to issue a commission, I don't have any bad intentions." Hearing Noah's words, the people around immediately had such a thought. "My goodness, you're actually trying to hit on someone in a fairy tale? Isn't it?" Noah held the counter lady's hand tightly. The counter lady's face was full of panic. Coupled with the bad intentions mentioned just now, anyone would think that Noah was using the excuse of issuing a commission to hit on the counter lady. Under such circumstances, the people around looked at Noah with admiration and amusement. This kid, he didn't even look at where he was. There were so many police teams belonging to Fairy Tale around, and this kid actually flirted with the counter lady in the guild. Wasn't he looking for trouble? Thus, many people secretly rejoiced in his misfortune. At the same time, as most people thought, many police officers walked towards Noah with an unfriendly face. Only the counter lady understood. She wasn't being flirted with, but she was in big trouble. Suddenly, the counter lady became more and more flustered. Chapter 2096. There was no doubt that Noah was here to cause trouble. If he wasn't here to cause trouble, why would he issue such a commission? For Fairy Tale, a simple search mission was not considered a big mission. It could even be said to be a child's play. Being able to get an E rating was already very good. However, who was the person Noah was looking for? Celestial Boy. Who was that? The current acting president of Fairy Tale, who single-handedly built the entire fairyland. In today's situation where Fairy Tale had the ability to dominate the world, Celestial Boy was definitely several levels higher than any country's head of state. In the end, Noah issued a commission, and the commission content was to bring such a big shot to him? Regardless of whether it could be done or not, even if it could be done, it couldn't be a commission that could be solved with a reward of 1 yen. Not to mention, Noah actually issued a commission to meet the acting president in Fairy Tale's territory, and the reward was 1 yen. What was this person doing here if not to cause trouble? The poor counter lady looked like she was only 17 or 18 years old, and she had obviously never encountered such an unreasonable commission. She was so flustered that she didn't know what to do. In response, Noah just smiled in response. "What? Is there no way to complete this commission?" "No. No. 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 No, 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 no." The counter lady was suddenly confused. Although she had never encountered such an unreasonable commission, which made the counter lady completely flustered, it didn't mean that the counter lady didn't know what this meant. If the counter lady really claimed that there was no way to complete a simple task to find someone, then Fairy Tale's reputation would be damaged. Therefore, the counter lady squeezed out a somewhat forced smile. Please wait here for a moment. This commission is a bit special. I have to ask my superiors. It's just a commission to find someone. There's no need to ask your superiors, right?" Noah touched the counter lady's hand as if to comfort her, the smile on his face getting wider. "How about this, you tell me where the designated person is, and I'll go find her myself. Is that okay?" The receptionist's smile became more and more forced. I really have to ask my superiors. There's really no other way." Noah shrugged, but the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. "However, I want to see the designated person by today. If I can't, then I will make a request every day and post it on the bulletin board. Then, I will tell others that this is the request you made for me." The receptionist almost cried. "Do you have to bully me like this?" However, the lady at the counter didn't know that her tearful appearance made her look like she was being molested by a pervert. The onlookers could not bear to watch any longer. Just as the surrounding policemen were about to teach this ungrateful lecher a lesson, a dignified voice sounded. "Why are you making so much noise?" Along with this voice, a policeman wearing samurai-like armor and a samurai sword at his waist walked over. It was a man who was obviously very old. He was at least in his 50s. Beside the man in his later years, there was a child who was also dressed like a samurai, but was only around 12 or 13 years old. He gave off a rigid feeling, like a follower. Even his young face had a serious expression. It was obvious that the samurai man and the samurai girl were a pair of policemen. Moreover, behind this pair of partners, there was a small group of police officers who were on a completely different level from the people around them. They formed a small group and walked over to this side. Looking at the group formed by the pairs of policemen, the surrounding policemen were pleasantly surprised. "Mr. Tang?" "It's actually Mr. Tang." "Huh, Mr. Tang is here. That kid is dead meat." The person who came was none other than Mr. Tang. 3 years ago, when the giant stone tablet collapsed in the Tokyo area and the Protoget animal army attacked, it was this person who acted as the leader and led the policemen in the Tokyo area to fight against the Protoget animal army. After the fiasco, in order to get Noah to help, he went to Mr. Tang from Fairy Tale. The cursed child by his side is the founder of my hall Changjing, Renxing Chaoxia. This pair of policemen's IP ranking 3 years ago was as high as 275, occupying a place in the top 300 IP ranking. Now that 3 years had passed, they were ranked 188th in the IP ranking and belonged to the S-level policemen in Fairy Tale. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Mr. Tang led Ninxing Chaoxia and a pair of policemen who were obviously not low-ranked. They separated the crowd and walked over. Sensing the movement from behind, Noah also turned his head and looked over. Mr. Tang had just separated the crowd and came in front of Noah. When he saw the appearance of Noah who turned his head, his footsteps suddenly stopped, and his pair of eyes suddenly widened to the maximum. "You," on the side, the serious expression on Ninxing Chaoxia's face instantly collapsed and was replaced by an unprecedented shock. Among the pairs of policemen behind Mr. Tang, many of them also widened their eyes in shock. After they rubbed their eyes in disbelief and confirmed that they did not see wrongly, their faces suddenly became distorted. Those police officers were all old members of Fairy Tale who had joined 3 years ago. Looking at Noah's face, which was once so familiar to them, all of them blushed. What happened? When the policemen around saw this scene, they were directly at a loss. The receptionist who was taken advantage of by Noah also had a confused look and was stunned there. The entire office suddenly became extremely quiet, there was no sound at all. Under such circumstances, Noah was first surprised that my hall master Zhang Zheng was actually here. When he realized that my hall master Zhang Zheng and Rising Dawn's armor had the guild emblem of Fairy Tale, he immediately understood. "So, you guys have also joined Fairy Tale?" Noah suddenly smiled. "Long time no see. Don't you recognize me?" Noah's words directly ignited the surrounding silence. Oh. The old members, whose faces had turned red from holding their breaths, shouted excitedly, giving everyone a fright. Of course, the thing that truly scared everyone to death immediately happened. President. Guild leader is back. Guild leader Noah is back. Accompanied by the old members' extremely excited shouts, the policemen around were first shocked, but when they realized that the name Noah seemed to be familiar, they were all stunned one after another. Especially the receptionist, she glanced at Noah, then looked at the client's name written on the commission in her hand, her eyes couldn't be any wider. Noah Dole. This name was not unfamiliar to the members of Fairy Tale at all. This was because after joining Fairy Tale, someone would definitely tell the new members something. You have to remember, the president who founded our guild is called Noah Dole. Yes. At this moment, the man standing in the office, bathed in the cheers of all the old members of the guild, was Noah Dole. The legendary person who founded this guild, who once killed a stage V protozoan, and who saved the entire Tokyo area. After understanding this, the people around, who just wanted to see Noah get beaten up by the policemen of the guild, were all dumbfounded. Only the police officers belonging to Fairy Tale reacted, one by one, their faces flushed red. Oh, 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 oh. The next moment, cheers completely resounded throughout the skyscraper. Chapter 2097. The headquarters building of Fairy Tale was the tallest skyscraper in the world. Its height reached more than 1,000 meters. There were as many as 200 floors. In order to build this building, Mugging not only allowed some of the cursed children who had the ability to help with the construction to participate in the work, he even invested tens of billions of dollars. In the end, it only took 2 years to complete. A year ago, it became the tallest skyscraper in the world and a representative of fairyland. And among the 200 floors, other than the office hall on the first floor, there were also commissions posted on the other floors. The higher the level of the commission, the more it was posted on the higher floors, allowing the high-level police officers who were allowed to enter the higher floors to select them. Therefore, if the police officer's level reached the highest level, S, then the area of activity was mainly above the 180th floor. Because of this, when the IP ranking reached the 188th place and was classified as an S-level police officer, Officer Mugging entered the office building on the first floor. The low-level police officers were so surprised. Under Officer Mugging's guidance, Noah was brought to the 180th floor, to the floor where only S-level police officers were allowed to move. Originally, on the 180th floor and above, if it was not an S-level police officer, staff, and VIPs who were allowed to enter, then they were not allowed to enter. However, Noah was the true owner of Fairy Tale, so he naturally did not need to follow these rules. Therefore, Officer Mugging brought Noah to a designated lounge on the 180th floor. As long as the police officers of Fairy Tale reached a level, they would be assigned to a lounge. Therefore, this was Officer Mugging's personal lounge. In the lounge that was decorated like a harmony room, Noah and Officer Mugging were sitting on cushions around a small wooden table. On the side, Rensheng Chao Xia poured hot tea into the cylindrical porcelain cups in front of the two, then sat next to Officer Mugging, her eyes staring at Noah's face. Under Rensheng Chao Xia's gaze, Noah bitterly smiled. What's wrong? Did I offend you in any way? No, no. Rensheng Chao Xia quickly shook her head, but she seemed to be in a dilemma. Looking at the initiator like this, my hall chief seemed to have seen through his thoughts and sighed. Zhao Xia, if you have anything to say, just say it. The guild leader won't mind. Hearing this, Ninsheng Morning Glow made up her mind. She faced Noah's direction and sat down on the ground. She bowed and kowtowed as she spoke loudly. I'm really sorry for what happened 3 years ago. 3 years ago? Noah was slightly startled, but he soon understood. Are you referring to the Third Battle of Tokyo? Yes. Rensheng Chao Xia didn't raise her head as she replied loudly. At that time, I was very rude to you, to the guild leader. I am truly sorry. This child always does things by the book. She's too serious. That's why she still remembers what happened 3 years ago. Just accept her apology. My hall master Zheng closed his eyes. Of course, at that time, I also did a lot of rude things to you, but I don't think those were wrong, so I won't apologize to you. 3 years ago, because Noah was completely disappointed with the humans in the Tokyo area, he announced that Fairy Tale would not participate in the Third Battle of Tokyo to resist the invading army of protogut animals. It should be known that at that time, most of the outstanding police officers were in Fairy Tale. Of course, Noah's decision caused the Tokyo area to lose most of the power to resist the protogut animals, causing the remaining police force to be defeated. Facing the army of protogut animals that was about to invade the Tokyo area, at that time, as the head of the police force, my hall chief had no choice but to go to Fairy Tale to persuade Noah to participate in the battle. For this reason, my hall chief even threatened and coerced Noah. From that time, Noah knew that although my hall chief considered himself a samurai, in order to protect justice, he was an ambitious person who would do anything. Unfortunately, my hall chief met Noah. An ambitious person met a hero. When two people meet on a narrow road, naturally, the brave will win. So, with his powerful strength, Noah easily defeated my hall chief, which eventually led to a series of events. Recalling what happened at that time, Noah shook his head with a smile, picked up the hot tea on the table, and spoke indifferently while drinking. For me, what happened at that time did have a great impact. It made me understand the good and evil, light and darkness, upright and insidious sides of human nature, and it had a great impact on me. In contrast, the fact that you held me hostage is irrelevant. Noah said in an indifferent tone. So, you don't need to take it to heart. Is that so? My hall chief nodded. That's great. Thank you for your understanding. Ninxing Zhaoxia respectfully bowed several more times, then finally raised her head. Looking at the pair of police officers in front of him, Noah could not help but smile. Compared to that, what I didn't expect was that you would join Fairy Tale. I just judged that joining this guild would be more beneficial for us. My hall chief said bluntly. After all, Zhaoxia needs the preparation that can only be made by Fairyland to prevent the activation of the protozoan virus. I also think that by joining this guild, I can achieve the justice that I want to protect in a greater sense. Now, I don't just want to protect the Tokyo area, but the whole world. Not bad, very noble. Noah said as he sipped his hot tea as if nothing had happened. But, as far as I know, Fairyland's position in the world is not on the side of justice right now, right? Are you referring to the so-called world-ruling public opinion? My hall chief snorted coldly. That's just a fabricated public opinion to achieve the hearts of the world's rulers. They are definitely not the ones who stand on the side of justice. But Fairy Tale is definitely not justice, right? Noah looked deeply into my cousin's eyes. Mugging said it before, we are fighting to protect our companions and family, not to protect all of humanity, and certainly not to protect the world. Do you understand? I know what you want to say. My hall chief was silent for a moment, before finally speaking in a deep voice. Although it's a little different from my ideals, this guild can provide me with a channel to achieve the justice I believe in. No matter what, I will fight as a member of this guild. That's good. Noah smiled, put the hot tea in his hand on the table, and looked at my hall chief. Since you brought me here, that means Mugging, Hina, Xiaoshi, Yanzhu, and Rentaro are not here, right? They are indeed not here. My hall chief nodded. Rentaro, Lan Yuan, and Yen Zhu have already raised their IP ranking to the 7th place. They are currently on a business trip as the leaders of the various tour groups sent by the guild to retrieve the cursed children. Hina Sprout has also raised her IP ranking to the 1st place, becoming the strongest initiator. She is currently on a mission as the ace of our guild. 1st place? Hina. Noah couldn't help but laugh. That's quite impressive. Before meeting Noah, Hina's IP ranking had already risen to the 98th place, making her one of the top 100. Now that 3 years had passed, Noah knew that Hina must have made a name for herself. It wouldn't be strange for her to make it into the top 3. Who would have thought that Noah still underestimated Hina? This child actually went straight for the 1st place. Thinking back to the first time they met, the little girl who was sleepy during the day and couldn't even ride a bicycle properly due to her owl personality, but turned into an expert sniper at night, Noah couldn't help but feel nostalgic. That's not right. Noah suddenly remembered something important and realized what was going on. Hina is very strong, but since she can raise her IP ranking, it means that Hina has become a police officer again, found a promoter, and formed a partner, right? If that's the case, who is Hina's partner? Chapter 2098. It was developed and issued by the International Initiator Monitoring Organization, ISO. It was a ranking based on the number of protozoa that each existing pair of police officers had defeated and their achievements. Why was it called the IP ranking? The reason was very simple. It was because the police officers were partners of the initiator of the cursed child and the facilitator of humanity. Initiator. Facilitator. Taking the first letter of the two, that would be I and P, therefore, the so-called IP ranking must be a ranking that was registered by the initiator and facilitator of the partner who became a police officer. In the past, Tina's partner facilitator was the professor who transformed himself into a mechanical soldier for the new human creation project. Of course, that professor did not have any combat ability. Generally, he was only giving orders to Tina and letting her complete the mission. The reason why Tina was able to enter the top 100 at that time was entirely due to her personal strength. After joining the fairy tale, Tina had lost her facilitator and even her IP ranking was frozen. It was not impossible to start over. But without a partner facilitator, Tina would not be able to increase her IP ranking at all, right? While Noah was thinking about this, Hall Master Zheng was stunned and said, "That's right, Hall Master Zheng. Don't you know that you're Tina Sprinter's facilitator?" "Me?" Noah was stunned. When did he become Tina's facilitator? It seems that you really don't know about this. Officer Zheng frowned and said, "As early as 3 years ago, President Tiantong announced to the public that you were out on an important mission and would not be back in a short period of time. After that, Tina Sprinter also registered as a police officer with the International Initiator Monitoring Organization and her facilitator partner at that time was you. In other words, Tina registered Noah as her facilitator without his consent at all. I think that this should be President Tiantong's idea." My Hall Master Zheng said. "President Tiantong has said that our guild will definitely become the cradle of police officers in the future. As the guild president, if you don't have your own IP ranking, it's inevitable that people will criticize you. That's why Tina Sprout registered you as her promoter. You're active in the front lines against the protozoa, leaving behind many achievements in various countries around the world. In the end, together with you, she was promoted to the first place in the IP ranking half a year ago." "What?" Noah was dumbfounded. "In other words, I've also become number 1 on the IP ranking?" "Yes." My cousin nodded his head. "Furthermore, everyone in the world knows about this." Noah was speechless. Who would have thought that he would actually become the first in the IP rankings without knowing it at all? Wasn't this a little too sudden? However, my Hall Master Zheng is right. Undoubtedly, as the president of Fairy Tale, Noah has obtained a police officer's license and has personally trained many outstanding police officers. How can his IP ranking be too low? Otherwise, when Fairy Tale is released to the world, it will inevitably become a topic for foreigners to pass time. It's not like it won't have any impact on the guild. Tian Tongmu is the acting president and Thousand Life Summers president's advisor. They also formed a police force partnership 3 years ago. Their rankings have risen quite a bit in the past 3 years. They are currently ranked 3rd in the IP rankings. My police officer said in high spirits. In addition to the rest of the S-grade police officers, our guild occupies 7 of the top 10 police officers. There's no doubt that we're the strongest civilian organization in the world. As early as 3 years ago, everyone in the world already knew that among the police officers, the power of the first pair was so strong that it could even influence the military structure of the entire world. One could imagine how powerful the top 10 police officers in the IP rankings were and what kind of impact they would have on the world. Under such circumstances, not only did Tina kick out the police officer who was ranked first in the previous IP rankings and become the strongest initiator, even Fairy Tale had 7 pairs of police officers who were ranked in the top 10. How could she not become the strongest? Countries around the world had always been worried that Fairy Tale would dominate the world and control them. Firstly, it was because of the current situation. Secondly, it was because Fairy Tale did indeed have the ability to do so. The 7 pairs of top 10 police officers were proof of this. IP ranking number 1, Noah Doria, Tina Sprout. IP ranking number 3, Tian Tongmu, Longevity Summer World. IP ranking number 7, Riken Rentaro, Ayan Lanhera. Together with the other 4 pairs of police officers, they were the strongest fighting force of Fairy Tale. This was a well-known fact. Not only did Noah partner up with Hina and become the first IP ranking, but even Mugging, Summer World, Rentaro, and Ain Lanhera had made great progress in the past 3 years and reached the point where they could influence the military structure of the world with their individual strength. Coupled with the completion of Fairyland and the expansion of the guild, there were indeed a lot of changes in 3 years. With this in mind, Noah could not help but speak in a low voice. I just don't know if these 3 years have changed the feelings of the holy ruler of Tokyo, My captain asked. What did you just say? Nothing. Noah came back to his senses and shook his head to get rid of the random thoughts in his mind and returned to the topic at hand. Since Rintaro and Ain Lanhera are traveling around the world as the leaders of the tour group, where did Mugging, Summer World, and Hina go? Hearing this question, my captain suddenly became serious. What's wrong? Noah keenly sensed that the atmosphere was not right. Did something happen? No. My captain shook his head and said so. It's just that, even if something did happen, it wouldn't be strange. Even if something did happen, it wouldn't be strange? Noah frowned. What do you mean? Not long ago, countries all over the world expressed their desire to have a meeting with Fairyland. My captain pondered for a moment and then revealed the news. The location is in the Tokyo area. A meeting? Noah narrowed his eyes. No wonder Mugging appeared in the live broadcast of the press conference, so he went to the Tokyo area for a meeting? For countries all over the world to suddenly request for a meeting at this time, it's definitely because of Fairy Tale. My captain looked straight at Noah. Among them, if some countries want to harm the president of Tendo, it's not impossible. Just like 3 years ago, Chua Xuanzong of the Daiban area proposed a meeting with the ruler of Tokyo, but repeatedly sent assassins to assassinate the emperor. Those who came did not come with good intentions, and those with good intentions would not come. In such a tense situation, representatives of various countries issued a request for a meeting, and the location was the only Tokyo area that had made their stance clear, that they were definitely on the side of Fairy Tale. Therefore, it was normal for someone to want to play some dirty tricks. After all, Noah, the real president, was not in Fairyland, and Mugging, the acting president, was the only pillar of support in Fairyland. Once Mugging fell, there would be no leader, and Fairyland would definitely be in chaos, and others would take advantage of the situation. Therefore, although nothing had happened at the moment, it would not be strange if something suddenly happened. That was what my captain wanted to express. Although Tina Sprout went to the Tokyo area as a guard, and the president of Tendo and consultant Shinsho are also the top 3 powerhouses in the IP ranking, it's better to be safe than sorry. My captain said. Under the targeting of countries all over the world, the president of Tendo cannot guarantee her safety. Noah immediately fell silent. My captain also fell silent and did not say anything more. In the lounge, a somewhat oppressive atmosphere spread, and Ninsei Asakaya could not help but hold her breath. After a while, Noah stood up. It seems that I have to go to the Tokyo area earlier than expected. Chapter 2099. The sky gradually darkened. Nighttime in this world is very scary. That was because at night, in the dead of the night, the low growls and roars of the protozoa would pass through the giant stone monument from time to time and reverberate around the edge of the city. The timid people couldn't even fall asleep, afraid that they would never wake up again if they fell asleep. Of course, in the noisy city center, such a sound is impossible to reach. Whether it is Fairyland or Tokyo, it is the same. Compared to the rapidly developing Fairyland, Tokyo has not changed much compared to 3 years ago. The holy residence where the ruler of Tokyo lived was the same. It had been there for 10 years without any changes. At this moment, in a living room of the holy residence, 2 young girls in their prime of life are sitting opposite each other, as if they are having a tea party. It's been a long time since I leisurely drank tea with Lord Holy's son like this. The girl who said such a sentence is Tenko Mugino. Behind Mugino, Xia Shi stood there quietly like a secretary. On the opposite side of Mugging was a pure and holy young lady. That is a girl as white and pure as snow. The girl is wearing a white wedding dress, white lace gloves on her hands, and a luxurious top hat on her head, with a stunning sense of sacredness. It is believed that as long as it is a person in Tokyo, then no one will not recognize this girl in her prime of life. The ruler of Tokyo, Holy Sun. If, after 3 years, Mugino has become much more mature than before, and all the childishness has faded away, the change is not small, then, Holy Sun is just the opposite. Time does not seem to have left any trace on this holy girl, making this young head of state still as holy and beautiful as 3 years ago. However, those in the know are sure to know that the change of Holy Sun is not on the surface, but in the heart. At least, until 3 years ago, no matter what kind of important occasion she attends, she needs to be accompanied by an assistant like Tenko Kikuchi or the like. Compared to 3 years ago, this girl has become extremely independent and wise, no longer the young head of state who is mocked by others as a vase and looked down upon after losing her assistant. Thus, the Elysian Emperor nodded at Mugung with a dignified and polite smile. After all, Tenko Kikuchi and I both need to manage a region. If not for this period of official business, then we would not have the chance to meet. I'm fine, at least I have Xiaoshi to help me, and there is also a group of smart and capable people in the guild. Otherwise, for a student like me who just graduated a year ago and didn't even go to university, I really can't torment such a big fairyland, Mugino replied with a smile. Compared to the Holy Son of Heaven who has been dealing with official business alone since 3 years ago, I am still far behind. Don't be so humble, Guild Master Tiantong. You're someone who built Fairyland single-handedly. No one would think that you're inferior to me. The Elysian child gently shook his head. Moreover, I can only handle official business, unlike Tenko Kikuchi who has great power. To be honest, being at the same table as you, I feel very safe. Lord Holy Sun, you feel safe, but that's not all because of me, is it? Mugino laughed. Lord Holy Sun must have guessed that Tina is nearby, am I right? That's one of the reasons. Holy Sun nodded. Although it's already an honor to have Sword Ghost and Think Tank at the same table, but with the rumored Black Wind keeping watch around, then nothing will go wrong. In the IP ranking, as long as it was a police officer ranked in the top 100, they would be given a nickname. 3 years ago, Tina, who ranked 98th in the IP ranking, already had a nickname, Black Wind. Today, Tina still used the nickname from that time, making the name, Black Wind, widely known around the world. Of course, Mugino, who ranked 3rd in the IP ranking, also had a nickname like Xiaoshi. Mugino was famous for his swift and ruthless Tenko-style sword-drawing technique. His combat power was even stronger than most of the cursed children, so he was given the nickname, Sword Ghost. Xiaoshi, on the other hand, was a cursed child with dolphin genes. Among the cursed children, he was one of the rare brainiacs. Usually, he was a supporting character. Although his combat power was not outstanding, he could clearly analyze the weakness of any enemy. Thus, he was given the nickname, Think Tank. By the way, Rentaro and Yen Zhu's nicknames were Chariot and Tornado, respectively. The former's identity as a mechanical soldier of the New Humans Creation Project was already known. Once the super holmium metal prosthesis was used like a rain of bullets, the battle was like a large chariot, extremely terrifying, so he was given the nickname, Chariot. The latter was a cursed child with rabbit-like genes. Among the current cursed children, his speed was definitely one of the best. On the battlefield, once he charged, not even his shadow could be seen. He was like a tornado passing through the battlefield. Thus, he was given the nickname, Tornado. As for Noah, as the world's strongest initiator, the promoter of Tina Sprinter, ranked 1st in the IP ranking, it was naturally impossible for him not to be given a nickname. However, for the past 3 years, Noah had not appeared in people's sight. The intelligence agencies of some countries could not even investigate the most basic information such as his birthplace. It was as if this person had appeared out of thin air. He had been active for a year and a half, and then suddenly disappeared. He was as mysterious as a supernatural existence, which made people shudder in fear. Therefore, until Tina broke into the top 10 of the IP ranking, Noah finally received a nickname. The Hermit. This was Noah's current nickname. Thinking of this, Xingtianzi lowered his head, his pair of eyes began to ripple. Then, Xingtianzi asked in a low voice, as if he was looking forward to it, but also as if he was uneasy. He hasn't come back yet? No. Mu Gang could not help but sigh. Since he left 3 years ago, he hasn't come back. And, in any case, our guild's intelligence department has no way to collect information about his whereabouts. Xia Shi interrupted and said softly. It's as if the president disappeared into thin air. As the words fell, the entire meeting room was filled with a somewhat heavy atmosphere. Is that so? Xingtianzi's eyes flashed with a flash of disappointment. He turned his head, looked at the night view outside the window, and muttered. It's been 3 years? Yes. Mu Gang also looked at the night view outside the window and said so. Time really flies. For me, it's a bit long. Xingtianzi's voice became a little distant. Yes, 3 years is too long. At the very least, Elysian Prince felt that the past 3 years had been too long. But, 3 years have passed. Xingtianzi whispered. It's time for him to come back, right? When he said this, Elysian Son of Heaven's tone was extremely uncertain. It was like he was looking forward to it, but also like he was afraid of being hurt, which would definitely arouse the sympathy of all men. In this regard, Mu Gang seemed to know something. He looked at Xingtianzi with some amusement and said so. Although our president is extremely domineering and does things his own way, as far as I know, he is not the kind of man who would break an agreement. Please don't worry. Hearing this, Xia Shi, who was standing next to Mu Gang, could not help but smile. Xingtianzi seemed to have only just come back to his senses. His pretty face blushed. After taking a deep breath, he suppressed the shyness in his heart and changed the topic. It's getting late, President Tian Tong, why don't you go back and rest early? There's an important international meeting tomorrow. That's true. Mu Gang smiled sweetly. Then I'll go back to the hotel first. Master Xingtianzi, please take care of me tomorrow. After that, Mu Gang stood up from his seat. Xingtianzi immediately stood up and walked out of the meeting room with Mu Gang and Xia Shi. Whether it was Mu Gang, Xia Shi, or Xingtianzi, none of them noticed. On the top floor of a building far away from the holy residence, a man in a black robe stood facing the wind, looking in the direction of the holy residence. Through the window, he looked at Xingtianzi, his whole body trembling. Chapter 2100. Lord Holy Son of Heaven, the voice that came out of the black-robed man's mouth was full of love. However, in addition to love, there was also extreme madness and greed in the voice. I'm finally back, Lord Holy Son of Heaven. The black-robed man stared at the Holy Son of Heaven who was walking out of the room in the holy residence. His voice was full of madness as he muttered. You're mine. You're mine. You're mine after all. As he spoke, the black-robed man's lips curled into a hair-raising arc under his hood. Then, the black-robed man bowed. Bang! In the next moment, in a muffled explosion, the black-robed man stepped on the ground and burst out like a cannonball. With a sharp sound, he rushed straight toward the holy residence. That speed was really faster than a bullet. The holy residence, which was originally a bit far from the building where the black-robed man was, closed almost half of the distance in less than a second. With this speed, the black-robed man could definitely break through the window of the holy residence in the next second and attack his target. This kind of physical strength was really shocking. Even the cursed child might not be able to reach this level. However, in the next moment, the black-robed man suddenly noticed something. At the top of a building further away from the holy residence, a red light suddenly flashed. The black-robed man suddenly came to a halt. He ignored inertia and gravity and abruptly stopped in midair. Almost at the same time, a sniper bullet cut through the air and swept less than a centimeter away from the black-robed man's chest, landing on the wall of a nearby building. Bang! The powerful sniper bullet directly blew up the wall, leaving a shocking bullet hole in the wall. The black-robed man who was in a frenzy just now finally reacted and broke out in a cold sweat. At the same time, the black-robed man also realized something. Someone was sniping at him. That red light just now was the muzzle flame of the sniper rifle when it was fired. But, how was this possible? The black-robed man turned his head and looked in the direction of the building. He whispered in disbelief. This has to be at least 2 kilometers away. Sniping from a distance of 2 kilometers. And it was so accurate. Who was it that could do such an inconceivable thing? Could it be? The black-robed man thought of a person, and his eyes under the hood suddenly widened. However, the black-robed man's time to think was over. The black-robed man saw it clearly. At the top of the building more than 2 kilometers away, bursts of red light flashed one after another. The black-robed man's expression changed dramatically, and he fell down without hesitation. Whoosh 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 whoosh. A few sniper bullets scraped through the air, creating a sharp sound as they pierced through the air. Suddenly, they flew past the black-robed man's position. Bang 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 bang. In the next moment, the powerful sniper bullets landed in the air one after another, blowing up the concrete on the ground where they landed. Whether it was the walls or the road, they were all blown up, leaving bullet holes in them. Once again, the black-robed man, who dodged in advance because he sensed the muzzle flame, broke out in a cold sweat as if he had escaped a calamity. The moment he landed on the ground, he immediately dodged and rushed into a nearby building. His back was pressed against the wall as he hid. The opponent's sniping was too terrifying. It was accurate to such an extent from more than 2 kilometers away. If he didn't hide, the black-robed man would be dead for sure. But, that kid isn't a close combat initiator. As long as I hide, there won't be a problem. The black-robed man muttered to himself. In the end, this sentence was exchanged for a voice. Indeed, I'm not a close combat initiator, but that doesn't mean I can't fight in close range. When this sentence rang out from the building and passed into the black-robed man's ears, his heart stopped beating. However, the black-robed man's subconscious saved him once again. He subconsciously rushed forward and left the wall behind him. Bang! The wall suddenly exploded. A petite figure rushed in from the outside, directly passing through the rubble that was still flying in the air, and shot in the direction of the black-robed man. The sniper rifle in her hand was used as a blunt weapon, and she heavily swung it in the direction of the black-robed man. This time, the black-robed man couldn't react in time. A powerful attack that was as quick as a thunderbolt was simply beyond the standards of a human. The black-robed man could only watch as the sniper rifle, which was used as a blunt weapon, hit his body. Then, something unexpected happened. Clank. When the heavy sniper rifle hit the black-robed man's body, a crisp sound like hitting steel sounded from under the black robe. The black-robed man was knocked away by the powerful force. After rolling on the ground several times, he stopped, turned over, and jumped up, staring straight ahead. It's really surprising. I thought that the blow just now was enough to get rid of you. The one who said this was the petite girl holding the heavy sniper rifle. The girl was wearing a one-piece blue dress. Her slender and petite shoulders were exposed, and the sleeves were black. Although she was less than 150 centimeters tall, from the performance just now, there was no doubt that extremely terrifying power was hidden in that petite body. The moonlight shone in through the gap in the wall that was smashed by the girl, illuminating the girl's silver gold hair and a pair of scarlet eyes. The figure like the Grim Reaper made the black-robed man say the girl's name in a hoarse voice. Tina Sprinter, the girl was Tina. The world's strongest initiator, the ace of fairy tale, Tina Sprinter. Looking at the cursed child bathed in the moonlight, the black-robed man felt that even his breathing was about to stop. At the moment when the pair of blood-red eyes stared at him, the black-robed man only felt the hair all over his body stand up, and even his scalp was a little numb. 3 years ago, Tina was already one of the top 100 cursed children in the IP ranking, and her profession was an assassin. At that time, Tina already had an illustrious reputation, and the name Black Wind resounded throughout the world. Even if she wasn't known by everyone, but those who knew her knew that up until now, no one had ever survived from the person she wanted to kill. The only exception was the Son of Heaven 3 years ago. Because at that time, Noah was protecting Tina's target, which was why Tina failed. Since then, Tina joined Fairy Tale. That failure seemed to have made the Grim Reaper of this inner world even scarier. In just 2 years, he had risen to the top of the IP rankings and slaughtered countless protogut animals. Even the number of Stage 4 protogut animals he had killed was unknown. Under such circumstances, the cold aura that came from a long period of killing was enough to make anyone who looked into Tina's eyes feel their body temperature plummeting. Although the black-robed man was very confident in his own strength, only at this moment did he understand one thing. That is, even if he was very special, compared to the girl in front of him, he was still not on the same level. Damn brat, being forced to realize this, the black-robed man's face under the hood began to distort. However, Tina just coldly looked at the black-robed man. After a while, she turned her head, looked to the side, and said so. Okay, all of you, come out. As soon as the words fell, the entire place suddenly fell silent. However, very soon, a pretentious voice rang out. I was discovered so easily, as expected of the legendary Black Wind. Accompanied by such a voice, 2 figures rushed out from the shadows where Tina was looking and landed next to the black-robed man. Looking at the 2 people, Tina frowned slightly. Allow me to introduce myself, Honorable Strongest. A tall and slender man in a crimson tuxedo with a clown mask on his face took off his hat and bowed toward Tina in a pretentious manner. My name is Leech, Leeching Een. Beside me is my daughter, Leech Little Benet. Let's say that 3 years ago, I was acquainted with that mysterious president of your family, right? Yes. Leeching Een. 3 years ago, he attracted the Stage V Scorpio, and almost brought disaster to the entire Tokyo area, the madman who attempted to destroy the world. Chapter 2101. Leeching Een. Tina's furrowed brows slowly relaxed. Her scarlet eyes shot straight at Leeching Een, then turned to Benet Leech Jr. Leech Benet held a pair of odachi in his hands, his eyes also becoming incomparably scarlet, but with an innocent expression, he said these words. Tina Sprinter, I know you. Dad told me that you're the strongest one among us. Saying this, Benet Leech Jr.'s murderous aura and blood energy rose. So, I want to chop you up. Undoubtedly, his expression was so innocent, but Benet Leech Jr.'s words and aura were quite terrifying. In this regard, Tina's expression didn't even change. She said somewhat coldly. You are not my opponent. Benet Leech Jr.'s eyes widened, and then his eyes became even more scarlet. Without a doubt, this cold-blooded cursed child was angry. Dad. Benet Leech Jr. said without turning his head. I want to chop her up. Even if you don't let me, I must chop her up. After saying this, Benet Leech Jr. didn't wait for Leeching Een's reply. His petite figure suddenly moved, like a mantis stalking a cicada, and raised the odachi in his hands high. Duh. Tina's feet suddenly touched the ground, and her figure rapidly retreated. However, Benet the Leech pounced in front of Tina at an astonishing speed and slashed out a thunderous slash at the retreating Tina. Chop you to death. Chop you to death. Chop you to death. That was a deranged cry. The cursed child named Benet Leech Jr. chased fiercely, and mercilessly slashed like a storm, causing streaks of cold light to appear in the air. Like a real blade, he slashed in Tina's direction like a storm. That terrifying continuous slash. If it was Tina 3 years ago, she would have been cut into pieces. After all, 3 years ago, Leeching Een and Benet Leech Jr.'s IP ranking was already 134, and this ranking had been frozen for a long time, and there was no update. 3 years had passed, and Leech Little Benet's strength had increased by leaps and bounds. At the very least, Tina was certain that even the top 20 initiators in the IP rankings were only at this level. Hina, on the other hand, was not a melee-type cursed child. Her IP ranking 3 years ago was only 98, so she was naturally no match for the current Benet the Leech. However, after 3 years, Benet the Leech had changed a lot, but Tina had changed even more. In the face of this terrifying storm of sword strikes that could have easily killed her 3 years ago, Tina looked on calmly. Her slender body was like a leaf as she dodged back and forth, evading all of the sword strikes with brute force. Immediately after, Tina suddenly spun around, and the sniper rifle in her hand transformed into a blunt weapon once again. Then, she flicked upwards from the bottom to the top. Bang! Binay Leach didn't even have the chance to dodge. He was smashed in the chin by the butt of the sniper rifle. He flew out like a bullet, brushing past Li Qingyin's side and smashing into the wall. Guha! Binay Leach spat out the air in his lungs. His body slid down from the wall, and he knelt on the ground. The initiator, whose strength was enough to rank in the top 20 IP rankings, was knocked down by Tina in one hit. The black-robed man sucked in a breath of cold air. Li Qingyin's pupils slowly contracted under his mask. After a while, he pressed down on his hat and said, "So that's how it is. Is this domain?" Domain. It wasn't an ability, but a realm. A realm that only the cursed child could reach. When the cursed child broke through the limits of their growth, a phenomenon called domain would appear on their body. Those who reached domain had extremely powerful strength. Those who hadn't reached domain would never be able to defeat those who reached domain. Of course, this realm wasn't something that just anyone could reach. Only a very small number of initiators with extremely high IP rankings had the possibility of reaching domain. Then, how high was it? This was something that hadn't been calculated yet. However, from the fact that even Tina, who was ranked 98th in the IP rankings 3 years ago, was unable to reach this realm, it could be seen that those who could reach the beginning of the domain would have to be at least in the top 20 or even the top 10 of the IP rankings. Tina had only reached domain realm 2 years ago. After that, her strength greatly increased, and she had won many battles. Finally, 1 year ago, she had reached first in IP rankings, becoming the strongest initiator. In other words, the current Tina's strength was also incomparable to before. It was because of the existence of this domain that the cursed child's strength was strong enough to influence the military situation of the world. Tina, who had already become the strongest initiator, now even if she was to face off against a stage V primitive animal that could destroy the world, she would still have the ability to win. This was the difference between those who had reached domain and those who hadn't. The reason why the Holy Son of Heaven said that with Tina there would be no mistakes was because he knew that Tina had already reached domain realm. Although Xia Shi's IP was ranked 3rd, logically speaking, he should have also reached domain realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to have such a ranking. Unfortunately, Xia Shi was the brainiac initiator, and the real combat strength was Mu Gung, who had the terrifying sword-drawing technique. In terms of combat strength, 3 years ago, Mu Gung was even stronger than Tina. It could be imagined that Mu Gung's strength was also terrifyingly strong. However, not long after Tina reached domain, Mu Gung's growth limit was broken, and Tina, who had rapidly grown, left him behind. Otherwise, Tina wouldn't have been able to become the strongest initiator, and raise her IP ranking to the highest by herself. Unfortunately, after reaching domain, the rate of the primitive animal virus in the cursed child's body would greatly increase. If it wasn't for the fairy tale, which had an agent that completely suppressed the invasion of the primitive animal virus, Tina would have very likely become a primitive animal. He. Li Qingyin let out a frightening laugh under his mask. No wonder you could become that man's initiator. Tui. The black-robed man spat in disdain, and his voice became filled with disgust. As expected, the initiator of monsters is also a monster. Hearing this, Tina's expression didn't change. She lowered the sniper rifle in her hand, and didn't even aim, as if she was really planning to use the sniper rifle as a blunt weapon. Her gaze fell on Li Qingyin and the black-robed man. Who sent you here? Is that important? Li Qingyin let out a low laugh. You only need to know that someone wants the life of the celestial child, and that is enough. Not only the celestial child, but the Holy Son of Heaven is also our target. The black-robed man's laughter was the kind of laughter that only despicable people would have. Of course, the celestial child can die, but the Holy Son of Heaven can't die. I still want to properly dote on her. The vulgarity in his words caused Tina's expression to become cold again. It seems that no matter how much I ask, you won't tell me. Tina stared intently at Li Qingyin and the black-robed man. First, I'll make you lose the ability to fight. Leave the interrogation to our companions in the guild. In the air, an astonishing pressure suddenly filled the air. The most powerful initiator who had reached the realm of domain was finally serious. The first to react was Li Qingyin. Li Qingyin suddenly pulled out two very strange-looking guns from his waist, and without hesitation, he pulled the triggers one after another at Tina. Bang 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 bang. Following the continuous firing of the guns, bullets pierced through the air, and enveloped Tina's direction. However, before that could happen, Tina had already disappeared. With a flash, she dodged the incoming shots like a ghost. Ignoring the bullets that fell near her feet, she suddenly charged forward. The sniper rifle in her hand whistled through the air as it violently swung toward Li Qingyin. Her speed was astonishingly fast. With Li Qingyin's speed, it was impossible to dodge. However, Li Qingyin wasn't an ordinary person. Snap! Li Qingyin suddenly snapped his fingers. Hum! In the next instant, an invisible repulsive force suddenly expanded from Li Qingyin's body, and it met Tina's sniper rifle. Dong! The sound of a heavy impact resounded. Chapter 2102. Boom! The powerful sniper rifle and the invisible repulsive field collided with each other. Not only was there a heavy muffled sound, but there was also a strong gust of wind that attacked the surroundings. Hina was surprised by the result. While Hina was still in shock, an ugly voice came from behind her. Did you forget about me? Stinky brat. Following this sentence, a black-robed figure whose entire body was shrouded in black robes sprang out from behind Tina and raised his fist before abruptly swinging it down. Boom! The moment the muffled explosion sounded, the entire ground was smashed into pieces by the heavy punch. Like glass, the ground cracked and collapsed. Rubble and debris shot out in all directions like bullets. Li Qingyin, who was closest to Hina, snapped his fingers again, and a repulsive force spread out, deflecting the rubble and debris. As for the black-robed man, he didn't even have time to react. He just let the rubble and debris fall on his body, causing a series of ding-ding-dang-dang sounds. Then, the two turned their heads at the same time and looked in the same direction. There, Hina just happened to fall from the sky. Obviously, when the black-robed man's shocking punch came, Hina had already jumped and dodged in advance. After standing still, Hina looked up and stared at Li Qingyin and the black-robed man. Her eyes began to change. So that's how it is? Hina whispered. Are you also the product of the new human creation project? If that wasn't the case, then there was no way to explain the repulsive force that Li Qingyin used and the black-robed man's strength and defense. It was obvious that it wasn't a power that an ordinary human could have. Li Qingyin had an imaginary device implanted in his body that could create a repulsive force field within a certain range. The black-robed man's body must have been modified as well. He probably had a mechanical body like Rentaro. Both of them were mechanical soldiers created by the new human creation project. Speaking of which, you're also a product of the new human creation project, right? Li Qingyin seemed to have thought of something and looked at Hina with a burning gaze. With a chip implanted in his brain, he can control a small reconnaissance aircraft called Sandfeld from a long distance. He can snipe from a very long distance and control all the information within his reconnaissance range. He's a super existence that combines the power of the cursed child and the mechanical soldiers. Furthermore, he's reached the realm of domain. I really want you to join us. Unfortunately, I won't betray my brother, Hina said without hesitation. The only person I can follow is my brother. But that guy has already disappeared, the black-robed man said with a cursing tone and a smile. Maybe that guy is already dead. As soon as he said that. Whoosh. Tina's body transformed into a series of afterimages as she hurtled toward the black-robed figure. The black-robed man was shocked. He quickly crossed his arms and blocked in front of himself. In the next moment, a sharp military dagger was tightly grasped in Hina's hand. With a cold glint, she stabbed at the black-robed man like raindrops. Ding 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 ding. The continuous stabs landed on the black-robed man's body, causing a series of crisp sounds. Ha 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 ha. The black-robed man laughed out loud. It's useless. No matter what kind of attack it is, it can't hurt me. Hina ignored the ear-piercing laughter. The military dagger in her hand continued to stab. The onlookers could only see the cold glint of the dagger as it landed on the black-robed man's body, causing a series of crisp sounds. The first person to realize that something was wrong was still Li Qingyin. That idiot. Li Qingyin raised his gun without hesitation and pointed it at Hina. However, Hina suddenly took a step and darted into the black-robed man's shadow. Li Qingyin's gun suddenly lost its target. That was because Hina's petite body was completely blocked by the black-robed man. Under such circumstances, Hina continued to stab the black-robed man's body with the military dagger. If one looked closely, they would realize that Hina's relentless stabs all landed on the black-robed man's left shoulder joint. Thus, when Hina stabbed the military dagger for the umpteenth time, there was no crisp sound this time. Crack. The sound of something cracking suddenly came from the black-robed man's left shoulder. What? The black-robed man cried out. Tisk. Li Qingyin was speechless. He gave up on the gun and rushed out. He activated the imaginary device in his body and concentrated the repulsive force field on his palm, forming an invisible repulsive force spear. Ah! Leech Benet Jr. finally recovered from his injuries with the strong regenerative ability of the cursed child. He held two odachi and pounced like a crazy demon. In the end, no one noticed. While Hina was stabbing the black-robed man endlessly, the sniper rifle in her other hand was already pointed at the ground. When Li Qingyin and Leech Benet Jr. were behind her, Hina's voice echoed. Explosive bullet. With that, Hina pulled the trigger of the sniper rifle. Boom! In the uninhabited building, a violent explosion suddenly occurred. Flames surged out of the building like a wave and instantly shattered the glass and walls. The pedestrians on the road were all shocked. Looking at the unoccupied buildings filled with flames, one by one, they were shocked, panicked, and in a commotion. Some even began to call the police. The explosion set the building ablaze and instantly created a fire scene. No one knew that the building was not on fire, but that someone was fighting. Gulp, cough, ugh. In the center of the explosion, in the building that had turned into a sea of fire, Li Qingyin, Leech Benet Jr., and the black-robed man were all on the ground. Their bodies were charred black and they let out muffled groans. Although they were not killed by the explosion, they were severely injured. Hina was standing in the middle, but she was not affected at all. She threw away the sniper rifle that had exploded because of the powerful explosive bullet and held a military dagger in her hand. She looked at the black-robed man and said coldly, "This is what you get for speaking rudely to my brother. Bastard." The black-robed man's face was ferocious. So strong. Leech Benet Jr. finally showed an expression of fear. Really, a monster. Li Qingyin could not help but let out a bitter laugh. Because, no one knew better than these three people why Hina was unscathed in the face of the explosion that did not distinguish between friend and foe. At the moment of the explosion, Hina released three spherical objects. That was the Sandfeld. It was a small reconnaissance aircraft that could collect all the information within its scope and directly transmit it to the user's mind. With the help of the three small reconnaissance drones, Tina was able to gather information about the explosion in an instant. She calculated the area of effect of the explosion and used her sniper rifle at the area where the explosion was the weakest to disperse the waves of flames and shockwaves that were rushing towards her. That's right. She dispersed it. Hina's attack had blown away the explosion itself. Undoubtedly, the cursed child was not a close combat type, but he had such strength. With such strength, it was no wonder that the strongest initiator would give up on long-range sniping, which was the most advantageous for him, and directly rush over. How terrifying. The initiator of monsters is also a monster, you said it yourself. Hina walked in front of the black-robed man and pointed the military dagger in her hand at his head. Her crimson eyes shone with determination. If my brother is a monster, then let me be a monster too. Her words that were not confused made the black-robed man tremble all over. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. The black-robed man roared in a low voice. Why is it that man? Why is it always that man? What's so good about that man? Why do you all see him in a different light? The roar that was full of hatred and resentment made Hina narrow her eyes. Did this guy have some kind of grudge against her brother? Just as Hina was thinking this, another voice that was different from anyone else's suddenly sounded. How surprising, I didn't expect you to still be alive. At this moment, everyone's eyes widened. Chapter 2103. The ceiling of the building that was engulfed in flames had already begun to collapse, causing thick smoke to fill the entire space. It was extremely uncomfortable. However, regardless of whether it was Tina, Li Qingyin, Leech Benet Jr., or the black-robed man, none of them cared about this. Everyone's eyes widened slightly. When they finally reacted, they turned their heads abruptly and looked towards the source of the sound. They saw that on one of the windows that was engulfed in flames, a figure had unknowingly appeared there. He sat on the windowsill, ignoring the surrounding flames as a pair of deep, dark eyes met everyone's gaze. You've grown up, Tina. Brother. The crimson color in Tina's eyes instantly disappeared, and they returned to their original color. The coldness that Tina had been carrying since the beginning of the battle had disappeared without a trace, and was replaced by excitement. He's actually back. Li Qingyin's expression changed abruptly under his mask. Father. Leech Benet Jr. seemed to have awakened a terrifying memory, and for the first time, she called out to Li Qingyin for help. Only the black-robed man's body trembled the moment he saw the person who had arrived. In the next moment, a roar filled with resentment and hatred rang out. Noah Dole. Driven by resentment and hatred, the black-robed man suddenly leaped up. His figure shot out violently, and he rushed in the direction of Noah with an astonishing frenzy. Brother. Only then did Tina snap back to her senses. She looked at the black-robed figure charging toward Noah, and her eyes turned crimson again as she arched her petite body without any hesitation. Just as Tina was about to rush out, a voice stopped her. Tina, don't do anything. Noah leaped down from the windowsill and landed on the ground. Looking at the black-robed man who was rushing towards him like a madman, the corners of his mouth curled up with a hint of mockery and coldness. I'd like to see how much you've improved compared to 3 years ago, you undying bastard. After saying that, Noah did not dodge. He just stood there, looking at the black-robed man rushing towards him with a faint smile. This performance naturally caused the black-robed man's resentment and hatred to become even more violent. You're courting death. The black-robed man suddenly roared, his speed becoming even more astonishing as he rushed towards Noah. Then, the black-robed man raised his tightly clenched fist, bringing with it the sound of the wind, and punching towards Noah's head. That punch carried with it a strong gust of wind that blew out the raging flames that were burning within a radius of a few meters. The sound of the explosion was extremely ear-piercing, telling everyone how astonishing the power of this punch was. Unfortunately, in the face of this astonishing blow that was like a cannonball, Noah only narrowed his eyes, raised his hand, and punched out. Boom! When the two extremely ordinary-looking fists collided together, accompanied by a heavy muffled sound, a circle of powerful impact suddenly spread out, shattering the ground, causing cracks to spread out like a spider web with Noah and the black-robed man as the center. However, the ground wasn't the only thing that cracked. In the split second when the two collided, the black-robed man's gloved fist also issued a cracking sound, and the entire sleeve of his arm was shattered into pieces by the shockwave. Hidden under the sleeves was an arm that had a metallic luster. It was an arm completely made of pure black metal, flashing with faint blue light patterns. Noah had only seen such an arm on one person. That was Rentaro. In the absence of gravity, using holmium as the base, and then mixing in rare and ordinary metals to create an artificial arm made of a next-generation alloy with a hardness and melting point several times higher than holmium? Noah opened his palm and held the super holmium metal arm tightly, and smiled at the black-robed man. You crawled back from hell, and this is what you get? After that, Noah suddenly turned around and kicked the black-robed man heavily. Clank! The powerful kick landed on the black-robed man's chest, and it still caused a crisp sound like the collision of steel. However, the force of the kick actually hit the black-robed man's body, and the black-robed man flew backward, his feet rubbing against the ground, and he slid all the way back. However, before that, Noah reached out a hand and grabbed the black-robed man's black robe. With a tearing sound, the black-robed man's black robe was torn to shreds. It wasn't until the person in the black robe slid all the way out that everyone present finally saw the person's true appearance under the black robe. However, when she saw the black-robed man's full face, Tina's scarlet eyes narrowed. If Tina, Rentaro, and Leech Ing-yin were all mechanical soldiers of the new human creation project, then in front of this man, they could all throw their identities as mechanical soldiers into the trash can. This was because no one was more suitable to be a mechanical soldier than the black-robed man in front of them. As a mechanical soldier of the new human creation project, Tina only had a chip implanted in her brain, and Leech Ing-yin had an imaginary device installed in his body. Even though there were mechanical parts in his body, he was undoubtedly a human. Even Rentaro only had his right hand, right leg, and left eye replaced with super holmium metal prosthetics. The man in front of them was a true mechanical soldier. There wasn't an inch of skin on his body, only pure black super holmium metal. Even the head was made entirely out of super holmium metal. The face was clearly a mannequin. It was a life form made entirely out of metal. However, from the man's metal face, Tina could still recognize a person in her memory. You are. Tina gasped in shock. Yoshihito? This name wasn't very well known. However, as long as it was a guild member who had joined Fairy Tail 3 years ago, they would definitely recognize this person. This was because 3 years ago, the captain of the Son of Heaven's guard team had a grudge against Noah. He buried hundreds of bombs in Fairy Tail, causing Noah to be completely disappointed in the people of Tokyo. He was the main culprit behind the decision to not participate in the Third Battle of Tokyo. How could this be? Tina was truly shocked. Undoubtedly, you were executed by my brother in front of everyone in Tokyo. It wasn't just an execution. When he killed Yoshihito, Noah used anti-tank bullets and blew up Yoshihito's entire head. Logically speaking, Yoshihito should be dead. There was no way he could come back to life. Yeah, I've already died once. The metal on Yoshihito's face wriggled like real muscles, causing Yoshihito's face to distort as he roared with extreme resentment. My entire head was blown up, I couldn't even feel pain, I couldn't even beg for mercy. In front of so many people, I was shot to death and became like this. If it wasn't for the fragments of my brain remaining, I wouldn't even be able to come back to life. No, even if there are fragments of your brain remaining, there is no way to come back to life. This is something even a child knows. Noah casually threw away the fragments of the black robe in his hand, as if he had seen through all of Yoshihito's secrets. He spoke indifferently. I'm afraid that someone injected the virus of a protozoan into your brain fragments. Relying on the protozoan's amazing regenerative ability, it allowed your brain to recover, then created a super holmium metal body, and put your head in it. That's how you successfully came back to life, right? Yoshihito's distorted face began to twitch. Obviously, Noah's words completely hit the nail on the head. Now, your brain has been transformed into a protozoan, and your body is also mechanized. There are no human parts to speak of. Noah smiled sarcastically. You didn't come back to life, you just became a monster. Chapter 2104. Noah's words pierced deeply into Zhuowei's heart, causing blood to rush to his head. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Zhuowei roared crazily. I'll definitely kill you. Just as Zhuowei was about to charge out again, a hand gripped his shoulder tightly. Unfortunately, it's almost time. Li Qingyin pressed down on his cracked mask with one hand and pressed down on Zhuo Ren's shoulder with the other as he spoke in an unquestionable tone. The attack should have already begun. If we continue to stay here, we'll just be digging our own graves. Zhuowei glared angrily at Li Qingyin. However, Zhuowei's angry glare was met with a murderous glare from Li Qingyin under his mask. If you don't want to listen to me, I don't mind making you listen to me. That deep and emotionless voice made Zhuowei's heart tremble slightly. Although Zhuowei had been modified into a mechanical soldier and was no longer an incompetent weakling like 3 years ago, Zhuowei was still no match for Li Qingyin. After all, Zhuowei was different from Zhuowei, who only relied on his mechanical soldier's super holmium metal body to fight. Not only could Li Qingyin skillfully use the virtual device in his body, but his combat skills were also quite powerful. Zhuowei could not compare to him. Zhuowei was just an incompetent captain of the security team. He was not like Li Qingyin, who had killed countless people in his life. He was extremely cruel and even tried to destroy the world. It was impossible for Zhuowei not to be afraid in the face of such a crazy person. Zhuowei could only unwillingly lower his arm and roar at Noah with a twisted face. Remember, one day, I'll kill you with my own hands. After saying that, Li Qingyin grabbed Zhuo Ren with one hand and leaped into the blazing sea of fire with Leech Little Benet, disappearing without a trace. Wait! Tina wanted to chase after them, but Noah stopped her again. Don't worry about them. We'll deal with them later, Noah said. What's important now is Mugging. Let's go there first. Young Mistress Mugging? Tina was first taken aback before coming to a realization. Could it be, that's right, their mission was to lure you away. You've fallen into their trap. Noah turned his head and looked in the direction of the sacred residence. Mugging should have suffered a real attack. It's more important to rush there now. It was just as Noah had thought. After Tina was lured away by Zhuo Ren, Yingyin the Leech, and Benet the Leech, a group of people attacked the holy abode. Bang, 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 bang. Amidst the chaotic gunfire, a group of people wearing bulletproof vests and gas masks were hiding behind cars, trees, and all kinds of cover, firing in the direction of the holy residence. The guards of the holy residence were fighting back. They used the entire holy residence as cover, holding guns and constantly shooting at the terrorist troops. Compared to 3 years ago, Holy Sun had obviously spent a lot of effort on the guards. The guards today were not as incompetent as they were 3 years ago. Although they were caught off guard, they still organized an effective counterattack and firmly blocked the terrorists outside the holy residence. Among them, Xia Shi also held a submachine gun and constantly pulled the trigger, letting the bullets rain out like raindrops, restraining the terrorists' footsteps. Behind Xia Shi, Mugging calmly held a knife, and beside her was Holy Sun. Bang! A grenade was thrown over, but it was shot by Xia Shi. It exploded in midair, setting off a strong wave of fire and impact. However, this grenade completely tilted the battle in the direction of the terrorists. As if they were inspired, the terrorists threw grenades one after another. Bang 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 bang. Explosions sounded one after another, blowing up the guards of the holy residence one after another. Some were even blown away by the waves of fire and impact, rolling on the ground in a sorry state and crying out. Under the powerful firepower attack, the terrorists finally came out from behind the cover. Like an army, one by one, they approached Mugging and Holy Sun. Miss Mugging. Xia Shi did not panic, but looked at Mugging calmly. President Tiantong. Holy Sun tightly held his hands in front of him and cast his gaze on Mugging. Under the gaze of Xia Shi and Holy Sun, Mugging only slowly put her hand on the hilt of the knife, and her eyes began to become sharp. Just as the knife ghost was about to show his power, an accident happened. Poochie. A strange sound suddenly sounded. In the terrorist group that came out in full force, the head of the attacker who rushed at the front suddenly exploded, splashing a large amount of blood and brain matter, and slowly falling to the ground. The sudden sacrifice caused the entire terrorist group to subconsciously stop in their tracks. However, the moment they stopped, the terrorists' doomsday also arrived. Shio 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 shio. Sniper bullets suddenly cut through the air, with a sharp sound that surpassed the speed of sound, fiercely attacking point one by one. The terrorists' heads were shot through by the sniper bullets, and with the last cry of their lives, they fell to the ground and lost consciousness forever. The group of terrorists had no way to find where the enemy was, and suddenly panicked. However, the sniper bullets that brought death continued, and the terrorists fell one by one. Pools of blood stained the ground red. Seeing this scene, Mugging breathed a sigh of relief and smiled slightly. Looks like Tina made it in time. Obviously, when the attack came and Tina did not appear, Mugging had already guessed that Tina was lured away by someone else. Now, Tina had obviously defeated the interferer and joined the battle. Apart from Tina, there was no one else in Mugging's memory who was able to hit their target with a 100% accuracy rate. Moreover, Mugging had already discovered that Tina's Sandfeld had moved here and was investigating the scene. There was no clearer signal than this. Tina made it in time? Xia Shi seemed to be relieved. Then there's no problem. They both belonged to the Fairy Tale Guild, and he was Tina's closest playmate, so no one knew how terrifying Tina's strength was better than Xia Shi. To put it bluntly, if Tina was willing, even if she were to attack a large country, it would only be a matter of time before the country was destroyed, unless there was someone who had also reached the level of domain in the country. Even if it was close combat, which was her weakest point, the current Tina could easily defeat almost all of the cursed children. Once she went into sniping, which she was most proficient in, she was truly invincible. Therefore, in Xia Shi's opinion, since Tina had made it in time, then there was no problem. However, the Holy Sun who had been protected all this time shook his head. No, it's not over yet. Yes. It was not over yet. Because, even though the terrorists were panicking after the unimaginable sniping, they still did not retreat. What did this mean? It meant that the terrorists were not willing to give up the attack, but it meant that they still had methods that they had not used yet. This thought was confirmed in the next second. Tisk, there's no other way. A guy who looked like the leader of the terrorists took out a communication device and shouted into it. Release that. Just as the leader of the terrorists finished speaking, a military helicopter flew over from midair. That's. Mugging and the Holy Sun seemed to have thought of something, and their expressions changed slightly. Xia Shi focused his attention on another place. That was a large metal box that the military helicopter was carrying. The military helicopter that flew above the holy residence directly released the steel rope that was holding the metal box, and the huge metal box fell from mid-air and landed heavily on the ground. Quick! The leader of the terrorists hurriedly ordered. Open it. A few of the terrorists immediately ran around the metal box and pressed the combination lock. At this moment, Mugging, the Holy Sun, and Xia Shi had an ominous feeling in their hearts. Chapter 2105. No one knew if Tina had the same bad premonition as everyone else, but a few sniper bullets immediately pierced through the air and shot the terrorists who were gathered around the combination lock, sending them to hell. Go again. Go again. All of you, go. The terrorist leader shouted in a voice that didn't sound rational at all, ordering the terrorists to go forward one after another, rushing to the side of the large metal box as if their lives depended on it. They operated the combination lock in an attempt to open the metal box. With so many sacrifices, the last password was finally pressed. Gotcha! Along with such a sound, the linked parts of the large metal box suddenly separated, as if disintegrating, falling in all directions. Wah! Seeing everything in the large metal box, Mugging, Elysian, and Xiaoshi all gasped in shock. Bang! A sturdy leg came out of the iron box and landed heavily on the ground, causing a rumbling sound and a cloud of dust to rise. A huge creature walked out step by step, exposing its full appearance to everyone's vision. Looking at the behemoth, all the guards of the holy abode widened their eyes, the blood draining from their faces. Mugging, Elysian, and Xiaoshi also looked at the huge figure, falling into shock. In a word, it was a protozoan. However, it wasn't a normal protozoan. At least, normal protozoans definitely didn't have such a huge body. Its height was more than 10 meters. The length of its neck took up 3/4 of its height. Its head was the appearance of a standard reptile. Its body was like an elephant. Although its tail wasn't as long as its neck, it was still much longer than its body, and was very heavy. When it landed on the ground, even a casual drag could crush the ground. Its appearance was simply like a long-necked dinosaur from the dinosaur era, its 4 thick legs stomping heavily, causing the ground to tremble. However, its skin wasn't as smooth and thick as a long-necked dinosaur's. Instead, it was filled with pore-like lumps, looking extremely disgusting. Ooh 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 ooh. Then, the long-necked protozoan let out a roar that shook the air. The roar even formed a storm, blowing away everything in the surroundings towards Mugging, Xiaoshi, and the Holy Son of Heaven. Mugung, Xiaoshi, and Xingtianzi all had different reactions when they saw the huge protozoa. Stage 3. No. It's definitely a stage 4 protozoan. Mugung's expression was a little ugly. How could this be? Elysian Son of Heaven was in disbelief. They actually managed to transport protozoa in here? Xiaoshi gripped his submachine gun tightly, his expression constantly changing. The three of them did not expect that in order to achieve the goal, the terrorists behind the scenes actually secretly transported the primitive animals to the Tokyo area and brazenly threw them into the attack. That was no joke. The protozoa themselves were not scary, but that was another matter altogether. The most important thing was that if one was attacked by a protozoa, there was a high chance that one would be infected with the protozoa virus, causing many people to turn into protozoa. If it was not handled well and the protozoa virus spread in the Tokyo area, it would definitely be a disaster. In order to kill me, they didn't hesitate to drag the entire Tokyo area into the water and involve the innocent people? Mugging gripped the handle of the katana at her waist, her gaze becoming fierce. A bunch of incorrigible bastards. Elysian Son of Heaven's expression also became somewhat sorrowful, closing his eyes as if he was praying to God. Under such circumstances, the terrorist leader pointed in Mugung's direction and actually ordered the protozoa. Kill her. Hearing that, the long-necked protozoan turned its long neck and turned its eyes to Mugging, a murderous glint appearing in its eyes. Ooh 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 ooh. The next moment, the long-necked protozoan actually obeyed the terrorist leader's order and moved its thick but short legs, running wildly in Mugung's direction. Dong 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 dong. The earth-shaking footsteps echoed in the surroundings, causing the entire holy residence to tremble. Lord Elysian Son of Heaven. Mugging and Xiaoshi chose to protect Elysian Son of Heaven at the same time, one on the left and one on the right, dashing in front of Elysian Son of Heaven, one on the left and the other on the right, one in a battle stance, the other holding up a submachine gun. Fire! Fire! The holy residence guards also reacted, suppressing the fear in their hearts. One by one, they raised their guns. Don't even think about it. The terrorist leader led the remaining terrorists and also raised their weapons, once again starting a gunfight with the holy residence guards. The protozoa in the shape of the long-necked protozoa, under the cover of the terrorists, roared while charging in the direction of Mugging and the others like a tank. Whoosh! At this moment, the sound of a bullet piercing through the air was heard. The powerful sniper bullet pierced through the air and landed on the head of the long-necked protozoa. Bang! The head of the long-necked protozoa was directly blown apart by the powerful anti-tank sniper bullet, spilling a large amount of blood and flesh. It was extremely gory. The long-necked protozoa's charge was stopped. Good job, Tina. Mu Gung and Xia Shi smiled in unison. Unfortunately, in the next moment, Mu Gung and Xia Shi's smiles froze. Gurgle gurgle. In a creepy squirming sound, the flesh on the neck of the long-necked protozoa suddenly bulged out. In the next second, the head of the long-necked protozoa returned to its original state, roaring loudly. Seeing this scene clearly, whether it was Mu Gung, Xia Shi, or the Holy Sun, all of them were shocked. Holmium is ineffective? The metal that could weaken the activity of the protozoa's virus, causing protozoa to lose their regenerative ability. Holmium. It was because of this metal that humans obtained the means to effectively kill protozoa and were able to survive. However, the long-necked protozoa in front of them had regenerated after suffering a fatal injury. No one would think that Tina's sniping would not use holmium bullets when the enemy was a protozoa. In this case, there was only one explanation that could explain the phenomenon before them. Holmium was ineffective. Is that protozoa's regenerative ability very high? At the top of a building far away, Tina, who was aiming and shooting, could not help but be speechless. For a moment, she could not snipe anymore. A stage 4 protozoan was a calamitous existence for ordinary people and even ordinary police officers. A person who had the ability to deal with a stage 4 protozoa alone, even if it was the initiator of the cursed child, had to be at least in the top 100 of the IP ranking. However, Tina was the strongest initiator. She had the ability to deal with a stage V zodiacal protozoa alone, let alone a stage 4 protozoa. However, that was under the condition that the attack method was effective. If holmium was ineffective against protozoa, then even if it could be defeated, the opponent would immediately recover. There was nothing that could be done. Therefore, the expressions of Mu Gung, Xia Shi, and Tina, who was sniping at the top of a building far away, became solemn. The Holy Sun, on the other hand, had a face full of worry. He clenched his fists tighter and tighter as he kept praying. The Holy Sun's prayer was obviously successful. Whoosh! Just as the long-necked dragon was roaring wantonly, the sharp sound of something breaking through the air rang out again. However, this time, it was not a bullet that caused the sound of something breaking through the air, but a person. A figure suddenly rushed over from the distant horizon. Like a meteor, it cut through the air and shot in front of the long-necked dragon. Then, it threw a punch. Boom! When the meteorite-like punch landed on the body of the long-necked dinosaur, the terrifying force impacted the huge body of the stage 4 protozoan and spread out. The long-necked dragon's roar didn't even have time to fall before its entire body exploded under the astonishing punch. Pieces of flesh mixed with a large amount of blood fell to the ground one by one like a large piece of trash. The figure that descended from the sky slowly landed, accompanied by huge pieces of meat and crimson blood. Then, it landed on the ground. Mu Gung and Xia Shijun fell into a daze as if they had not reacted to what had happened. The Holy Sun was also stunned. However, when he saw the full appearance of the figure that landed on the ground, his beating heart suddenly stopped. At the same time, Noah raised his head and met the Holy Sun's gaze. Time stopped. Chapter 2106. Perhaps it was just an illusion. However, at this moment, everything in the world seemed to have disappeared, leaving only a man and a woman, looking at each other. Noah and the Holy Son of Heaven looked at each other, and they could clearly see the emotions in each other's eyes. Of course, Noah did not know what kind of emotions were in his eyes at this moment. Noah only knew that in the eyes of the pure and holy girl, all kinds of emotions were clearly revealed. In those eyes, there was disbelief. In those eyes, there was disbelief. In those eyes, there was an extremely strong joy. In that pair of eyes, there was an unprecedented emotion of excitement. Although all of this was only shown in those watery eyes, Noah undoubtedly felt it for nothing. 3 years was like one day. With just one look, Noah could confirm that the pure and holy girl in front of him was still the same as the head of state who confessed in front of him 3 years ago. She had not changed at all. At the very least, the feelings in the deepest part of his heart would be completely revealed with just this look in his eyes. Thus, Noah's expression unknowingly softened. Only at this moment did Mugung and Xiaoshi react. Looking at Noah, the shock on their faces turned into shock, and then into joy. Noah. President. Hearing Mugung and Xiaoshi's call, Noah retracted his gaze from the Holy Son of Heaven and turned to the two girls. However, the current situation was clearly not suitable for reminiscing. How? How is this possible? The terrorist leader, who had witnessed the entire process of the long-necked dragon being killed, let out a trembling voice, as if he was hysterical. Hey! Move for me! Move for me! You haven't completed your mission yet. You're not allowed to die here. How much do you think it costs to nurture you? Hurry up and get up. Amidst the terrorist leader's shout, the pieces of flesh of the long-necked dragon that had been blown apart suddenly wriggled up. The surprise on Mugung and Xiaoshi's faces faded, and they became alert again. The Holy Son of Heaven also realized that this was not the time to be happy, and his face tensed up again. Even Noah frowned slightly. He looked at the pieces of wriggling flesh around him and muttered softly. Not only is he immune to qi, but his regenerative ability is also so strong. As mentioned before, there were differences in the regenerative abilities of protogut animals. Ordinary holmium weapons, which were weapons made from holmium, could kill individuals. Their regeneration ability was ranked at level 1. Most protozoa and originators belonged to this level. Those that did not belong to this level were defined as level 2. They were able to resist ordinary weapons and could only be defeated by beheading or burning them with fuel. At level 3, even the severed arm could be regenerated or returned to its original body. The cells seemed to resonate with each other. Level 4 meant that even if it lost most of its internal organs, it could still regenerate. If one wanted to kill it, they would have to destroy it completely. Level 5 meant that even if the target was thrown into an extremely low temperature, vacuum, or magma of thousands of degrees, as long as it adapted to the environment, it could regenerate. Moreover, it was a molecular level regeneration. Other than super holmium items, no physical means could kill it. Since the giraffe was immune to qi and could move even if it was bombed into pieces, its regeneration ability must be at least level 3. Not only is it a stage 4 protozoa, but its regeneration level has also reached level 3. Noah cast his gaze on the terrorist leader and narrowed his eyes slightly. This protozoa, that guy was really commanding it just now, right? Let alone a stage 4 protozoa, even a stage I protozoa had never been heard of taking orders from a human. However, the terrorist leader had successfully ordered the stage 4 giraffe to attack. Leech Shadow Een, Threat Protector, and stage 4 protozoa. All of them are cards that ordinary people can't have. Noah was deep in thought. Looks like the attack this time wasn't as simple as the rulers of various countries not being able to tolerate the existence of fairy tale. With this thought, Noah looked at Xiaoshi. Xiaoshi, you have incendiary bombs on you, right? It was just a short sentence, but Xiaoshi had already understood. The next moment, Xiaoshi took out a few incendiary bombs from his waist, pulled out the safety pin, and threw them directly at the giraffe's flesh. Bang 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 bang. Following the sound of explosions, the incendiary bombs exploded and set off bursts of fire. The entire vast space in front of the holy abode was engulfed in flames. The fire engulfed the wriggling flesh of the long-necked dragon, slowly burning. Under the burning of the fire, the giraffe's flesh was gradually roasted to a crisp. Finally, it stopped moving and turned into ashes in the fire. It's over. The terrorist leader let out a voice of despair. At this time, Tina's sniping began again, shooting down all the terrorists one by one. Looking at this scene, the terrorist leader knew that it was over. He, extremely abruptly, the terrorist leader began to laugh neurotically. It's okay, it's okay. The terrorist leader let out a voice that made one's hair stand on end. Even if we fail this time, next time, we will definitely succeed. In the end, the world will definitely belong to us, to our Five Xiang Association. Five Xiang Association. Mugging and Xing Tianzi both had a reaction to this name. Five Xiang Association. Noah was slightly startled. Noah had never heard of this name before. Just as Noah was slightly startled, the terrorist leader suddenly pulled out a gun and pointed it at his throat. "Wait!" Mugging and Xing Tianzi exclaimed in unison. But, at this time, it was already too late to stop it. Bang! The sound of the gunshot echoed clearly in the sky above the blazing holy abode. The terrorist leader slowly fell to the ground. A large amount of blood flowed out from his throat and dyed the ground red. Mugging and Xing Tianzi opened their mouths slightly. In the end, they sighed and chose to remain silent. Noah's brows furrowed once again. Ignoring the raging flames, he directly stepped forward and came in front of the terrorist leader. He squatted down and removed the other party's gas mask. What appeared in Noah's field of vision was an extremely ordinary middle-aged man. Of course, Noah didn't recognize this middle-aged man. His gaze stayed on the middle-aged man's face for a while. Noah then turned to the middle-aged man's body and began to inspect. Suddenly, Noah discovered that there seemed to be a mark on the middle-aged man's neck. Raising his eyebrows, Noah directly reached out and tore off the middle-aged man's bulletproof vest. He looked at his neck. The mark on the middle-aged man's neck was nothing else but a tattoo. A pentagram tattoo decorated with a pair of feathers. A pentagram tattoo decorated with feathers. Noah whispered. Five Xiang Association. Noah didn't know what this so-called Five Xiang Association was. However, from the fact that the other party's members could control protozoa, it was definitely not an ordinary organization. Moreover, this organization was very likely to have people who could carry out the transformation surgery of the new human creation plan. If this wasn't the case, then Threat Zhuo wouldn't have become a mechanical soldier. I'm afraid that it's not an ordinary person who can carry out the transformation surgery of the new human creation plan, right? After all, it might not be too difficult to inject a brain fragment into a protozoan virus and restore it, but it was definitely not as easy as it sounded to fit a restored brain into a mechanized body, allowing the brain to smoothly drive the entire mechanized body and maintain its rationality and thought processes. In addition, Li Qingyin also appeared and moved together with Threat Zhuo, who was reborn. This so-called Five Xiang Association was definitely not ordinary. Of course, whether or not Threat Zhuo was a member of the Five Xiang Association still needed to be proven. Perhaps, like Li Qingyin, who was once employed by the Heavenly Chrysanthemum, Threat Zhuo was only hired by the Five Xiang Association and became the other party's hired thug. In this case, whether or not the person who helped Threat Zhuo with the transformation was a member of the Five Xiang Association also needed to be carefully considered. I just came back and there are already a lot of things to do. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.